Fellow Americans, I want to speak to you tonight about the troubling events of the past week.
I'm going to pull the whole thing down. I'm going to bring the whole fucking diseased, corrupt temple down on your head. It's going to be biblical.
How's it going, everybody? FCB here. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing fantastic. And I hope you're all in amazing spirits. And welcome to The Pulse here on the Freedom Channel broadcast. My, lots going on, isn't there? Ladies and gentlemen, we are heading towards some very uncharted waters. Number one, Israel is going to attack and preparing to attack Iran. They're going to attack Iran in the sense of they're going for the nuclear sites. So where the nuclear power sites are, they're going directly there. Now, why are they telling Iran? Number one, we must remember this, that they've got to tell Iran because there are commercial flights that are taking place there. You got Qatar Airlines, you got Emirates, you got Etihad. There is also other, there could be domestic and there could be other, diplomatic flights that take place there. And they've told the Khamenei, who is the leader of Iran, and said, as from Sunday, so Sunday in Iran, basically they're going to start bombing. They're going to start bombing the nuclear sites, so as far as where the nuclear power is going on. Netanyahu is preparing to do a full onslaught attack. And what the Khamenei, who is the Iran's leader, is doing is shutting down the airspace for rocket launches. So they're shutting down all commercial flights, shutting all the airports down as they prepare. Now, this is big, ladies and gentlemen. This is huge. This is what we've been waiting for, this major, step in that direction, because number one, this is the scare necessary event that we've been, obviously heading towards. Now, President Trump has been saying to Iran not to do it. Iran's doing it. They were trying to rope in America into doing it. No, America's not involving themselves. Now, is this a future-proof past? Yes, definitely. Now, what we are seeing right now is all part of Trumpy's little horror show. That's what I call it, the horror show. Because let me tell you what I call it, Trumpy's horror show. President Trump is basically the horror show for the deep state. In other words, they never envisioned this kind of hell. And he's literally bringing hell on the deep state. And he has been from the very beginning. Number one, the war, the unseen battle that was fought by the military. And that is one, shall we say, that's the battlefront. And we also got the digital battlefront. Now, as you know, the Q plan is digital military intelligence. 3854. The greatest military intelligence operation of all time. There you go. So not only did President Trump, the military have been fighting it on the physical realm, but also President Trump has created the digital soldiers, right? With this digital soldiers. Now, there is the deep state are on many levels. Number one, the deep state are also, as you know, out there, politicians, bureaucrats, deep state elements as like, breakaway military, all that sort of thing. Okay. And also in this movement. Because remember, the war is being fought on many fronts. And that's why this movement right here has been infiltrated by those that are the deep state. Their task is to what, ladies and gentlemen? Is to destroy President Trump's digital warriors as well. So, for example, with Q knew about this. Q knew that they're going to pretend to play the insider game. Oh, we've signed an NDA. We're got the inside take. Q tells us that they use this little system called free information to bait people that draws them there, and they expand exponentially because they all work in a, shall we say, in a clique. They all claim to be insiders. They all claim to have insider contacts. They do not. Patriots, meaning the military, do not reveal classified information. Now think about it. Does the military reveal all that information to those people? No, they don't. Those who claim to be ex-military and say they have that kind of information, forget about it. Q knew about this was going to happen. Q knew that they were going to use this, a method, a way of getting into this movement, infiltrating it, and using their little tactics. Also, there are con artists that infiltrate this movement, and they manipulate the people that are emotionally compromised. Now, Q has said it, absorbing the confused. Yes, because there's a lot of people that are confused, ladies and gentlemen. They're walking around dazed and confused. Q drop 1343. They attempted to infiltrate, repackage, and rebrand it as their own. And that's exactly what the deep state tried to do. And they used the disinformation. Misinformation is spread by those that are confused. They reroute people to their own platforms because there they got them. They spread their misinformation. And then it says there, action was needed. Number 2, kill, targeted, infection prior to expansion. They say prevention is the best cure. Well, there you go. And simple non-direct statements needed to be made. Be careful who you follow. Q has said that. Q drop 1295, 1296, 1297, because some are profiting off this movement, and we can see that. And those who are guilty, the ones that we speak about, react. You see how they react, and they don't like to be exposed. Their attempts to divide, because the military, as I said, are working on many fronts. Okay, remember, Space Force is using cyberspace as well. So they control the cyberspace domain. That's why President Trump also created Space Force, to control cyberspace, because it's very fundamental. Now, you can see this is not a game. This is not a popularity contest. Now, we heard President Trump say this just recently, this term right here. Now, it may be referring to Diddy, but he's actually telling us this is not a popularity competition. This is life. This is real. True freedom, truth is logic. And that's what we use here, ladies and gentlemen, is logic. We use facts, evidence, and receipts. We do not use hearsay. And the others that go around using hearsay, using fear porn, using all their weapons, you might as well classify them to be part of that deep state. They're either deep state or there to corrupt people for their own enrichment. one way or the other, consider them to be the part of that deep state. They don't want people standing in their power. They don't want people using their logic. They will use every means possible to manipulate. So President Trump created his digital warriors to combat these things. The real digital warriors, which are here with us here right now. Because there are those they call themselves digital warriors, but yet they are the ones that are walking around dazed and confused and believing they're too absorbed and sucked into the opium that they've been, obviously addicted to. And that's what I'm saying. The real digital warriors can see through this. We can see what's really going on. Back channels are important. Now, back channels is referring to this, ladies and gentlemen. These are the back channels. Q is the back channels. That's what military intelligence is, Q. Back channels are important. This is the back channels. Attacks will only intensify. You attack those you're threatened the most. We are attacked. Remember, we've been called civic-tards. We've been called every name under the sun. And we know who's the ones that have been calling us these names. Remember, they started off and they started to try and they used the Q movement. They used this movement. They infiltrated it. And then once they done what they done, now they're calling us civic-tards. Now they're calling us all these names and they're discrediting Q. You know who they are. We don't need to sit there and mention them. All right? One of them, to me is a disgrace, a real disgrace. Now, as I said, the back channels are important. Attacks will only intensify. You attack those who are threatened you the most. Enjoy the show. Now, also, another thing that we must realize that Q plus is real. Now, Q plus is President Trump. Let's get that right, 100%. He's been giving us comms over and over again, and we know that he is Q plus. He's given us by a series of mathematical impossibilities. Q tells us that mathematical impossibilities is how you get the message across using comms. The other thing is President Trump has gone out there and given us direct comms that he is Q plus. And we've seen this over and over again. The other day, as I said, and I showed people that President Trump is Q plus. And he's given us, as I said, you go to his Truth Social. On his Truth Social, he's clearly shown us, and I've shown you this on the previous pulse, where President Trump, in his let's see if I can find it, ladies and gentlemen, real quickly. But in his Truth Social, he's posted things to show that, hey, I am Q plus. Why would President Trump put these posts out there? It doesn't make any logical sense. After all, he's the one that's, controlling Truth Social. Yes, it's his team. But why would you, under your account, put references to Q plus right there, smack bang in front of your face? President Trump is definitely Q plus. He's been giving us proof after proof after proof. Have a look at this. This is his Truth Social. Right there behind, this is on the 18th of May, 2025, 7:13. All right, let's go here. Right there behind him, right next to him is the Q plus. That's Obama, that's him. Let's go to the picture. The picture is right there. I would say he's trying to let us know, hey, I'm Q plus, right? Logic suggests the same deal with this one. He's got Q plus on his collar. Have a look. That was dropped on the 18th of May, 2025, 7:13 again. Q plus is on his collar. Let's go to that photo. It's right there. Now, I don't know what you want. What more proof do you want? And those are calling us civic-tards or Q-tards or whatever, and making out that Q and trying to gaslight us that it's not real. Well, think again. Why would Commander-in-Chief Trump be doing that? And no one has, as to say, they can't answer you, ladies and gentlemen. They can't answer you at all. They sit there and they say, oh, yes, they're all for Trump. They're all this, they're all that. Realistically speaking, they're not. Realistically speaking, they're trying to gaslight us. Realistically speaking, are they part of the deep state in this movement? Yes, they are. You can write them off already. They play this little game that they're in this movement to help us out and all this sort of stuff. They use hopium, they use hearsay, they use fear porn to control and absorb the confused. That's what they try to do. Now, I just want to say to S. Shaw, I did see that, but however, that's not qualified as a Q. Carol and I have been through that video frame by frame. That's not a Q. Sorry, that doesn't qualify as a Q. His Qs are pronounced. That Q was not classified as a Q, ladies and gentlemen. It wasn't. In fact, the 5 of 5s that he gave us, which was the 5 and the 5, yes. However, that does not qualify as a Q. We know we've seen these Qs. They are well defined. So that's what I'm saying. If I'm going to see something and call it a Q, it will be a Q. However, we don't want to sit there and give comms where we break things down. And I will show you, ladies and gentlemen, I did it with Carol. Carol will vouch for this, that we went through this together, and we cannot call this a Q. His Qs are well defined. And I've got videos, many videos, and I've shown you in the past, we can't do that. We can't call it a Q. However, he did this. He did that 5-5. And there's a reason why. And I want to say thank you to Carol for one of the things that she pointed out, and there was another thing that I pointed out. There was two factors that were beyond the peripheral. So realistically speaking, we can't call that a Q. These Qs are well defined. But getting back to what I'm saying, President Trump knows what he's doing. You could see with the facts, evidence, and we speak in volumes that he's definitely Q plus. Q plus means, that he's the one that controls, as I said, Q, military intelligence. After all, he is the commander-in-chief. And Q knew that we were going to be attacked. That's why they made these statements in the Q drops. Beware or be careful who you follow. Also, Q knew that there were going to be those that were going to play the prophet. Oh, yes. We knew that was going to happen. So not only did we know about absorbing the confused, because what they were going to do is create a diversion to their platform and mislead people. And we know also Q mentions about Alex Jones being a Mossad asset. That's definitely in the Q drops as well. Now, why would President Trump give us a reminder as such just recently this month and tell us, I'm Q plus? Think about it from a logical standpoint. And that's what I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen. Isn't it time that those who have been calling us civic Q-tards, and you know who they are, those who have been discrediting this movement, those who have been using this movement to enrich themselves, isn't it time that you purged them, got rid of them, and let's get real? Because you're not doing yourself or anybody any favors by enabling these characters. Because to them, it's all about making money and tearing apart this movement, which they have been doing. Because by absorbing the confused, by giving them what people want to hear, the hopium, that's exactly what people want to hear. It's a drug, ladies and gentlemen. They've been giving them the drug that they want to hear, and they're willing to pay. You know what druggies are like. When they're addicted to something, they're willing to pay for it. That's what it's all about. They're redirecting people to their platforms, and they're giving them what they want to hear. And I've seen it time and time again. And it's like the RV, the med beds, the Nasara Jasara, the woo-woo. All that is basically hopium. That's what it is. And that's why you got to remember, I am a Q decoder, and I want people to get it. Because you know what? There are those that are attacking me out there, and they're questioning my loyalty to President Trump and this movement. I have not gone out there and done what the others have done. I'm not out there to enrich myself. I've proven myself, and I've worked very hard at what I do. And obviously there are those that go around and they play this little game to try and sow discord, because they know, you think about it, they're going to try and attack the warriors, God's army. They're going to try and attack. That's okay, go and attack us, because you're not going to win. You're not going to win, and you know it's game over. You're finished, right? No matter what you do, no matter what you say, you're going to destroy yourself. You're finished. And that's going to be the end of it. That's what I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen. I am a proud Q decoder. I've been wearing this for a very long time. I marched in the streets, right, when I was protesting with this on. I had God's army on my back when I was out in the streets, and you've seen that. You've seen what I say. I am consistent with whatever I say. I don't flip-flop like the others do. I don't make prophecies. I don't make out that I'm a prophet. I don't make out all these things. Q tells us clearly about the false prophets. What are they doing? Q drop 1295. There are so many of them out there. So why would Q put out this statement? Be careful who you are following. Some are profiting off this movement. Some are building a bigger following, and that's what they're doing. And they're absorbing the confused. Think about how you create a big following. You create sensationalism. You create fear porn. You create what people want to hear, the hopium. You build all that rubbish up, and guess what? You're attracting a huge following. And do you think for a moment, why would Q put out these statements? Do they ask for monthly payments to remain patriots? Q drop 1295, 1296, 1297. I've never put anything behind a paywall. I can say that with my head held up high. At least I can say that. And do you think for a moment that these others can say that? No, they don't want to speak about these Q drops. Why? Why don't they want to speak about these Q drops? Because they know it'll destroy their money, their money maker. It will bring an end to their deception. Q tells us to beware of false prophets. And there's so many of them going around. I mean, they've been going around and saying about Netanyahu, that is the chosen one for Israel. And we know that Netanyahu basically is what? A warmonger. We know that Netanyahu is being shown for what he is right now. And then what are these false prophets trying to do? They're trying to backpedal. Now, these followers of theirs have been trying to come into my chat and say to me, oh, no, they're saying, no, they got it wrong. No. So you're telling me that they make prophecies that come from God, that they claim to make these prophecies, or Jesus, and then they say they got it wrong? God never gets anything wrong, and neither, as I said, they're making these prophecies. And Q says, you're not a prophet. I'm not a prophet. We are not prophets. Focus on the mission. What is the mission? What we're on right now, Digital Warriors, that's the mission. That's the mission we're on. The mission of true freedom, the mission of truth. It's certainly not a mission about the crypto. It's certainly not a mission of enriching ourselves. Right? It's not. And this is the thing. What are they doing? They're going around and they're not fighting for true freedom. The only profit we should be all striving for is true freedom. It's not about the money, but for them it is. They seek to personal gain at the expense of others. They seek to make money. And it says there, Q is telling us this. Why? Ask yourself, ladies and gentlemen, why? They say they got, like for example, the doctor that's not a doctor has a Q next to him. Well, why doesn't he read out these drops? What doesn't he read out these drops, ladies and gentlemen? Because he won't. He won't read out these drops right here because of this statement right there. Can you see the hypocrisy that we're dealing with? And I would consider them to be part of this deep state. And there's so many of these players, ladies and gentlemen, that what have they been doing is creating division upon division. In fact, they've been called the QAnon leaders, and that is not giving us any credibility out there. I'm trying to bring credibility into this movement. I'm the only one that's been trying to do it and try to bring the word truth back into the movement, where these others have gone around and been decimating it. And because of these others, we've been painted with the same brush. No, they can stop tarnishing us with that same brush. Because you know what? President Trump foresaw all this. They knew about this military intelligence. Now ask yourself, we know that Q is definitely military intelligence. Q tells us that the back channels are important. This is the back channels. They knew that attacks will only intensify. They don't read all the Q, they don't bring out the Q drops that are important because they know that that would destroy their whole little, shall we say, their setup. Yeah, as a Q decoder, I'm telling you and I'm showing you everything on facts, evidence, receipts using logic and also using the Q drops. That's why I'm attacked, ladies and gentlemen. And as I say, what do? They attack the messenger, not the message, because they can't attack the message. That's fact. So what did President Trump do? He created this and created their own little horror show, Trumpy's little horror show, as I said, in this movement, because not only has he been fighting the deep state on the physical realm, so to speak, but also on the digital realm as well. And that's what Trumpy's little horror show has been all about. Now, another thing about Trumpy's little horror show is we're having psychological operations that are taking place. There's a lot of distractions, a lot of things that are taking place as far as being gaslit. We're seeing that, for example, did we envision this for us? We thought when President Trump was going to come back in or something like that, that it was going to be heads rolling straight from the get-go. That's what we thought. However, President Trump is a master strategist, and obviously things need to translate to the masses, it needs to make sense. So therefore, he's using his strategy, he's using his assets, which is the psychological operations group known as POG, against the deep state. See, POG have been used also against mankind in wars. And also, you think about it, psychological operations have been taking place with the CIA, using Operation Mockingbird, and that's all facts, and many other psychological operations that have taken place. President Trump is using his assets and he's created his own little horror show for them. Okay, now never before has the deep state envisioned such a horror show for themselves. I mean, he's turned everything, taken everything, turned it around and threw it in their direction. And that's exactly what's happening right now. Now, you're seeing all these things about AIPAC, never before have we seen such exposure about those that have been greased off by the state of Israel, the conduits known as AIPAC, American Jewish Congress, American Jewish Committee, and all their various manifestations worldwide, never before. President Trump is doing these things in order to draw attention. Another thing is, think about this. Elon Musk used to be a champion of the deep state. Yes, you know that. He was part of the revered left. You know that he was involved with Obama. Obama destroyed the space program and gave him all the NASA tech, and NASA was created. People think, to go to the moon. No. That technology was to do with missiles. All that reverse rockets, all these things, all that sort of stuff, that was done by other technologies like military programs that were developing this technology, NASA, other space programs, because Q tells us that there are other space programs that are outside the public domain, which is true. And God knows where they're based on the, you've seen, in the movies, and whatever we see in the movies, they're actually showing things in front of our faces. So in other words, fake moon. I've said about the moon. There's a moon up there, and they keep putting this thing. Oh yeah, the Death Star, a fake moon. Iron Sky, another movie with a fake moon. All these things. They're saying that the moon is basically the secret. No, look at that right there. Q dropped 2225. Did NASA fake the moon landings? Have we been to the moon since then? Are there secret space programs? Is this why Space Force was created? Now, you've got to remember there are space programs that are outside the public domain. But don't just think America. Think China. Think other countries as well that have been involved in these secret space programs. Now, Q tells us that false moon landings are real. But which moon? That's the question. And Q tells us also that there are programs that exist that are outside the public domain. So realistically speaking, you know what I mean? There are other space programs that exist that we don't know about, and they've been doing these, shall we say, they've been putting it in front of our faces. I mean, look at that movie Moonfall, just recently, about an artificial moon that was created by, technology, AI is involved. Why? Why do they keep bringing up this narrative? Because they've got to show us in front of our face. Okay? And as I said, the deep state, the cabal have been on many fronts. And what does Q says? Knowledge is power. So by telling us these things, we're being empowered with the truth. And then what does it do? Those that want more knowledge, Q wants us to find out, to do our research based on facts, evidence, and receipts. So that's why Q uses the Socratic method and get us to think, because our minds have gotten so much atrophy. Now you think about it, when you don't go to the gym, you don't use the muscles, you get atrophy. It's exactly the same thing with the mind. So President Trump has been fighting this battle on many fronts and developed these digital warriors as well. The deep state have never envisioned such hell that has been brought on them, because they've been living, shall we say, in the dark, keeping us like a bunch of mushrooms, fed shit and kept in the dark. And that's how the deep state wanted it. Evil operates in the dark. And what does Q says? Bringing dark into light. Now think about the light. What is the light out there? Public consciousness, public awareness. And that's exactly what's going on. President Trump has been doing these things using this plan, the military intelligence, this plan to be able to expose the deep state organically for the masses. That's why Q says future proofs past. So these things have been dropped in the past and now it's been proven in the future, giving validity to the plan. And what is a plan? It's a predetermined plan. It's something that has been done, organized. You know what I mean? That's why they call it a plan. And the deep state, because there are many layers, people have got to realize when we talk about the deep state, it's not just one layer. There are multiple layers. And Q tells us also that it's not Republicans, it's not about Republicans or Democrats. They are both compromised. They are both compromised. That's why President Trump says, I belong to the party of common sense. Because it's not about the left or the right, and we know that both sides are compromised. We know that the entity in the middle is the one that controls both the left and the right. They both fall, so serve the same beast. The illusion of democracy is nothing more than an illusion. President Trump is destroying the matrix. He literally is, ladies and gentlemen. And that's the thing. It's all, he's doing it in real time now. Now let's go to this Q drop right here. Q drops 749. Controlling the crops, meaning us, controls the people, the sheep. Might be reaching out there, but throwing it out there. Sorry, might be reaching, but throwing it out there. Now think about this. Coincidence that the Matrix, and you know what, we've heard what Keanu Reeves has said, that the Matrix is not a movie, it's a documentary. In other words, it's reality. Coincidence, the Matrix movie grew people as crops. In other words, they use us, our energy, okay, which means our life force, to be able to, number one, let's talk about the Babylonian money trick. The money goes through us, it circulates, we give it life through our sweat equity. Therefore, we're using our energy to give money the value that it needs. So realistically speaking, they've been using our energy, us as resources, to be able to create their whole, shall we say, their whole system, and controlling our minds using as various mechanisms. Number one, the financial system, debt slavery, keeping us dumbed down, controlling the crops, all the basically by all the things: food, water, air, pharmaceuticals, pharmakia, poison. I wonder where that derived from. The idea. There you go. Now comes the conspiracy label. The deeper we go, the more unrealistic it all becomes. Trumpy's horror show is for them. Trumpy's horror show is bringing on the pain for them, but Trumpy's horror show is bringing the pain for the people. Now, Q says also that pain is necessary because pain brings awareness. When we pinch here, we know it makes us aware. And that's exactly how you awaken a sleepwalker. You bring on the pain. And that's part of Trumpy's horror show. Now think about it. We're in this, shall we say, the deeper we go into the looking glass, as in Alice in Wonderland, the more unrealistic everything becomes. And that's exactly where we are right now. We're in a state of, how can I say, everything is just so bizarre. Everything is out of phase of the Matrix. And that's exactly what's going on. President Trump is bringing down this whole system. The end won't be for everyone. Because realistically speaking, ladies and gentlemen, the end, you think about it, what you've gone through, the amount of research that you've done, the amount of emotions that you've gone through. Think about that, right, for the masses. Think about that. Are they able to digest that in one go? No, they're not. That's why they've been doing this in stages, this whole plan, done by design, because think about it. Civil war. They wanted to avoid civil war at all costs. And President Trump has been doing everything he possibly can to avoid civil war, to the point of staging this whole Jan 6 thing. This whole thing, remember, it's about showing contrast. Biden, we know that this whole Biden thing was done by design. After all, he said, we didn't have a president. We had an auto pen. You heard that. Well, that's basically it. In other words, this character that's been playing Biden, and we know there are political decoys being used. Fact, they're being used. Don't look at my previous polls. I've spoken about this many times. There are political decoys. There is plastic surgery. That's fact. Then they use these entities to be able to carry out a narrative. Now think about this. They use Biden as a contrast, but there is being controlled military operations, even with the border. People don't realize they made it out, there's millions and millions of people. No, that was all controlled. That's why there was sections, not all, taken down. Remember all these contrasts when President Trump would do, and think about why. Because that's how much a man cares about his country, and only the country, the world. Because as America, if America falls, so does the rest of the world. We're all in this together. After all, I've shown you in the previous polls, the enemy within, that we are all connected to the US through the corporation. Now, as I said, President Trump has been doing things by design, and this contrast is to show people. So there would be no civil war. because people would fight the very matrix that enslaves them. They would fight for the mortgage. They would fight for all these things that have been placed upon them, the debt slavery, the system that has enslaved them. Never before have we seen such an exposure to do with the state of Israel. Remember that before, no one would dare speak about that, otherwise you would be called an anti-Semite. Period. You would be destroyed. Any reputation that you had would be decimated. And now we're seeing such a flip in the world, such a huge change. You could see it out there that people are moving towards Palestine. It's out in the streets. But also you got to remember, these are controlled military operations that are taking place. And there are things that are being used. Assets, actors. President Trump just recently went out and he said about Scott Bessent being the treasurer, central casting. I'm going to show that video. Why does he keep saying it? What's central casting? That's actors. It's like central casting. You see, oh, it's Scott. Doesn't any one of this is what I'm saying. This is what is the frustrating part, ladies and gentlemen, is that don't people sit there and they clap at the rally. Yeah, MAGA. But they don't realize, they keep saying he's central casting, central casting. Doesn't anyone realize what he's saying? You think to yourself, don't these people want to, well, hold on a minute, what is he saying? Let me go and do some research. No, let's just wear the red hat and cheer him on. That's the problem, ladies and gentlemen, that's the problem. Now, why does President Trump also keep saying 31% about, he keeps saying 31% about Harvard? That's all been done by design. Because we go to QJOP 31 and we know what he's really speaking about is something very important. QJOP 31 is basically about that he knows how it must go down. World stalemate. We all have the goods, so basically on everyone else. Say on the deep state, they've got the goods. They're tied to foreign leaders. That's part of the reason why some things tie back to foreign heads of states will remain classified at this point, I believe, but not all. We are in one of the most critical times because you've heard that President Trump has said 31% about Harvard, 31% influx of overseas students. This is exactly what he keeps talking about. This Q drop keeps coming up. Because we are in the most critical times of our country. Trump and others are working to balance the we're doing well for America. Done by design. Because remember, he's got to win the hearts and the mind of the common person so they can endorse him organically. And think about it, it's been happening. Remember, the Biden contrast was done by design because he's been winning over the common person using Biden as a contrast. Had that Biden character not been put in place for the 4 years, think about it, there would be no contrast and there would have been a risk of civil war because the amount of division. So President Trump, that's what I'm saying, this is all part of the design, the genius that this had to happen. Remember the 46, that we know who's been doing it. We don't need to revisit this over again. We know that the 19 comms tells us to go back to the days of Rutherford Hayes, the 19th president. And what is the common denominator between him and President Trump? Both were sworn in secrecy. Both were inaugurated in secrecy. Now, that's what it means. Now, at the end of the day, he's had to have the endorsement of the common person, hearts and minds, in order to go to the next step, the next level. And that is to bring on the justice. Because in other words, when you win the hearts and the minds of the common person, you're going to have common unity. Therefore, when you start to bring out these things, like for example, the delay of the Epstein files, the common person has been going out there in the mainstream media and screaming on top of their lungs, where is it? And many other things. Are they using Kash Patel and Bongina as a way of showing the corruption of the FBI future-proofs past? Yes, possibly. Remember, these things that are happening right now. There are things that are happening by design. This is a master strategist you're talking about. President Trump is a genius. We are in psychological operations. Now, as I said, it has to happen. That's why these rallies are being, taking place over and over again, to gather the common person's endorsement. Because when they start to bring out things and they start to bring them out, they're going to be demanding that they see Hillary. The common person will be demanding to see Hillary, Fauci, Obama, all these players to be put into jail or worse. And obviously they will oblige, and President Trump will play the neutral card. You've seen that little neutral card that he's playing. For example, Q-Drop4 says that when they start to get indicted, he's going to play the neutral card. And you could see that with Diddy just recently when he was asked about pardoning Diddy. And we'll go through that. This is all part of the neutral card that's being played. He's a master genius. You've got to remember this, ladies and gentlemen. And those people that get upset and can't see it, it's obviously they're not invoking their logic, and they're using their fear and their, shall we say, their blindness. Because there are people that go out there and they say that I'm against Trump. No, you couldn't find anyone more loyal to President Trump that has devoted his life, and I mean his life, and taken down everything that I had dear to my heart, and left it behind. I am definitely somebody that has put everything on the line for President Trump. I've even had to do things which obviously I didn't want to do but you know what? I've done it. I've put everything on the line for that man. People don't realize the loyalty and how much it takes, and I've done it and I've proven it. So those that go around saying that question my loyalty about President Trump or my loyalty to Q, think again. I don't think there's a lot of people that will be doing what I'm doing, if anybody. Now, he's doing it by design. He wants to get the endorsement. Well, at the same time, he's purifying the government, removing the bad actors, the bad players, the deep state, who are deeply entrenched. Now think about that. People think that the deep state are only one level. No, it's multiple levels. People are saying, the deep state are being taken care of. Really? Do you know what the deep state really means? I don't think people get it. Deep. Multiple levels. Plants are necessary. Psychological operations. Creating Trumpy's little horror show is necessary for them in order to draw them out, in order to expose them. Now, President Trump is going to use all his assets. Assets are deployed, and his assets are psychological as well. The military operation group out of Fort Bragg that are doing what they're doing in order for the good of mankind. Because they've got to draw out these deep state entrenched players. And, he says there is much string pulling and blackmail that we need to cut these off. So in other words, the deep state players have no longer got a puppet master, and they're trying to fight for survival because they know that they've been involved. And guess what? They've got to continue on. Now, these players are being exposed. Now, you're seeing never before have you seen President Trump been doing things and putting the spotlight on certain people. Number one, I've been called all these names because I'm not following the narrative of MAGA. I'm not following the narrative of endorsing Elon Musk, endorsing Pamela Bondi, endorsing Pete Hegseth, when I've exposed and I've shown you over and over again their connections And yet these people are going out there and calling me all sorts of names. Well, as I said, you can attack the messenger, but you can't attack the message. I even throw it in their face and they've got nothing to say but garbage back. Because you know what? They can't attack the message, but they go after me. And I'm somebody that is a true patriot, someone that's fighting for true freedom for all. And just because I don't go by the same rhetoric or dance the same little dance that they do is because I invoke my logic. I'm a decoder, I'm an investigative journalist, and I can call myself by that right because I've qualified as one. I've got the backing of it. What have others done? Nothing. I'm bringing the light to where the light needs to be drawn to as well. Now, President Trump is doing these things as a master strategist. People are going on by what's going on about, Macy being bad and all that. And I've exposed and I've shown the truth about what Macy's all about. I've shown you that Macy is a white hat. He's with Trump. But yet they go by the superficial. They go by what the Republican Party say. And we know that President Trump is playing the game to expose those entities. And you know that there are people that are, and you heard what Tucker, what they've said, that there are entities that are part of the administration that want to get President Trump to fight against Iran. Now think about it. You think about a master genius, you got to sit there and see who is doing what. Who is here for what? That President Trump is watching and seeing who are the ones that are going to step up and say, go and fight against Iran. They're bad. That is working for the state of Israel. And we know that the Mossad have created in the past, the state of Israel, false ops, false flags. Number one, USS Liberty, trying to get the US to fight with Egypt. That was Israeli. That was done by the Mossad. Operation Savannah, by bombing cinemas and libraries and places where there were US citizens and other, people, UK and all that. But they used Israeli assets to do it using the Mossad. And you think that it hasn't continued on with this Washington, D.C. business. Is it a future-proof past again? Could it be something that the White Hats have staged? Yes, it could possibly be. Because it's definitely a future-proof past and it's drawing attention. White Q says that leaving this Israel for last. There's a reason and a rhyme for everything, ladies and gentlemen. President Trump is creating a personal hell, a horror show for the deep state that they'll never forget. Remember, they're seeing everything that the deep state created crumble in front of their very eyes. The cabal created crumble in front of their very eyes. That's a horror show, right? Have you seen what's happening out there, for example? In the stars, the world of the stars. What are they doing? They're exposing him. They're exposing him. Like, you saw about what he said about Beyonce. How Beyonce got cashed up. How many millions of dollars? Oprah cashed up millions and millions of dollars by the deep state to do what they did for Kamala using taxpayers' money. He's exposing him to the people. Now think about these people right there. Think about that. Taylor Swift. President Trump's been exposing that entity as well. Why? He's drawing attention to the deep state, shall we say, their assets, because they're assets. They're weapons. People don't realize it's just their music. No, they've been behind a lot more. Entertainment. Think about that word. By keeping people in a state of entertainment, you're containing their mind. Enter means to enter. Tain means to contain. And ment in Latin means the mind. And by keeping people dumbed down, not only by their music, which is basically garbage, their lyrics are full of debauchery. They are also deep state puppets. Their music is played at 440 hertz, which is also, it affects and puts your body in a dis-ease mode, not at ease. Go and look into that. That is factual. Where they use frequencies against us, and pop and R&B and rap and everything and all that sort of commercial, even country music, ladies and gentlemen, they've been using against us. And that's the thing. These entities are being taken down. So now you're seeing that Shakira, abruptly cancelled her concert due to technical issues. Are you serious? Technical issues can be overcome like that. Another thing, would you envision to see that Bono, and we know that Bono from U2 has been a deep state asset, just like Geldof, just like all of them, right? And can you see that he's on the Joe Rogan show? And I've been telling you, ladies and gentlemen, that Joe Rogan has been used for his reach. President Trump has been going out there and using Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, all these other major podcasters, even though they're no good, Alex Jones, for their reach. And now you're seeing that the people that Joe Rogan's been having on his shows, like Bono, is showing his, that, hey, who is this guy, really? You know what I mean? Joe Rogan was a never Trumper, and I've proven that over again. Go and look at my previous polls. Greta Thunberg was something that the deep state created for that climate change crap. Now she's going around and they've turned it around, and they used that entity. So Trumpy's little horror show's taken that little asset of theirs and turning it around and getting that entity to go and fight against Israel. Think about the genius. Think about the genius. Pay attention. Think about it. Greta Thunberg, no matter what it's irrelevant, boy, girl, whatever it is, I don't care. I'm sticking with the facts and some receipts here. Now you think about that entity that was created by the World Economic Forum, the deep state, the cabal, for climate change, to pull their agenda. And guess what? Now they're taking that thing. That's the proof, ladies and gentlemen, that the White Hats are definitely in control, that President Trump has got this. They've taken that, and Trumpy's little horror shows turned it around, flipped it around, and here you go. It's fighting in the opposite direction. WEF was with the state of Israel. The WEF had that little agenda going on. And now they've taken that, flipped it around, and here you go. Taken it and pushed it towards the state of Israel, ladies and gentlemen. That is the genius of this man. Another part of this, and this is what I want to say. This is the horror show that Trump's created. When you use people like Piers Morgan, yes, ladies and gentlemen, Piers Morgan, you know, the one that used to speak against Trump? You use that entity right there, and now you're using him to what? You're using him to be able to bring down the state of Israel. Pay attention to
you
your
said
screen,
there were
ladies and gentlemen,
50,000
because
Hamas.
this is
Others have put the
unbelievable.
total figure at
me
around
just bring this in.
25,000, which
As I said, welcome to Trumpy's little horror show.
begs the question, but you said there were 50,000 Hamas, others have put the total figure at around 25,000, which begs the question, if after 18, 19 months now, you have been waging this ferocious war against 25, 26,000 terrorists, and you still haven't defeated them, your strategy is failing. How many children have you killed?
Pierce, Israel is not
Well, how
killing
many?
children. Israel is not killing children. Hamas is using them as
Israel is
human
killing
shields.
children every single day. And what you're trying to do is be very weaselly with your words.
No, I'm not.
The truth is, you are killing a lot of children.
You
would
know
argue
that,
you're
you know why it's caused?
Hang on, let me
because
finish.
Hamas is using them as human shields, and you know
Let me
that.
finish my question to you. You are killing a lot of children on a daily basis. That is indisputable. My interesting question for you is, how come you know exactly how many Hamas terrorists you've killed, but you have no idea how many children you've killed?
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. That's the genius of this man. So not only has he taken, this is what I'm saying, people got to see what's really going on. That President Trump has taken control over the mainstream media. And that's your proof. Piers Morgan used to be somebody that was against Trump. We've seen his show. You've seen that they're using Bill Maher. That you know what Q speaks about Bill Maher being a pedophile. The red shoes man, all that sort of stuff. And now he's using that and flipped it all around. Can you see? This is the genius. Now, these are psychological operations that are taking place against the deep state. And as I said, the deep state are many layers, and they're trying to draw out these deep-rooted plants out of these worms. And you could see that this is the genius. Now, as I said, would you remember about Greta Thunberg that she was with the WEF? She was created by that entity over there in order to bring in that climate change agenda. And President Trump has been saying about, the climate change, the green hoax. We know that the Paris Accord was basically a hoax, ladies and gentlemen. We know that to be true. In the Q drops, it clearly says it. President Trump said, I got myself out of it. We got ourselves out of it. That's obviously, if we go to Q drop 489, it's right there. US taxpayer paying for it all. And if you think about the US taxpayer, think about all the rest of the world, because you know that we are connected to the US through the corporations. And I've exposed that in The Enemy Within on the previous pulse. Please watch The Enemy Within. There's a lot of great content, and I exposed the deep state, their little mechanisms, the corporations and all that. Paris Accord was a scam, period. Trillions of dollars, just like Red Cross, just like the foreign aid, which is the US aid and the worldwide aid, just like war. Now, President Trump has been doing this by design. He's been taking these players down. Now, he's been using Elon Musk. Remember, the left revered Elon Musk. Yes, ladies and gentlemen. Let's not forget that. Let's not forget. Let's go back to the day when Elon Musk left President Trump, okay, because with the Paris Accord back in 2017, Elon Musk was for it, right? You know what Q says. You know what Q says. Now, have a look at this. Donald Trump, Elon Musk says he'll stop advisory role if the US drops out of the Paris Accord deal, the Paris climate deal. That was in 2017. This is the genius of this man. People don't realize that, number one, Elon Musk is connected to Obama. That's how he got his billions of dollars using these space programs and all these other little things that he did, care of the deep state. And that's what I'm saying. We got to go future proves past. And you can see, ladies and gentlemen, that the future is proving past. In the past, you think about it, that was in 2017. That's when Elon Musk threatened President Trump, and he left President Trump because President Trump got us out of that right there. Q tells us in Q drop 489, that was 2018. Future proves past. All right? And you're seeing it now. What's happening with the bill, the big beautiful bill? We've been through that. That Elon's speaking against it. Now, he's saying that, and remember, what was Elon saying? It's got to do with the raising of the debt ceiling. Hold on a minute, Elon. Wouldn't you call yourself a hypocrite if we go to the past and we know about the Paris Accord, and according to the Q drops, we know, and President Trump has gone out in the rallies, and even the MAGA people that are watching me, you know what President Trump said about the Paris Accord and the Green New scam? You've heard it. I've been to the rallies in Miami, and I've seen it for myself, and I've heard him say it about these things. So don't sit there and complain about what I'm talking about, Elon Musk. And I'm showing you back in 2017 that Elon Musk left because President Trump got ourselves out of this. And we know that the Paris Accord is scams. It's trillions. And think about this. We've all been, our leaders have been involved in ciphering money from the taxpayer, because we're all connected, remember, through the corporations. The money's been going through the taxpayer into these Paris Accord. Now think about this Paris Accord. It's got to do with what? Number one, climate change. You know what I mean? Back in the day, it was called global warming. It's another rebadge or another remanifestation. And what have they been doing? Using Hollywood, using documentaries, using the mainstream media, and using the government. That is the deep state right there. Then they created that little manifestation known as Greta Thunberg, the WEF. Then they made us believe that we are the problem, that we should depopulate. And Bill Gates was going out there saying, I could show 15% of the population, while people were cheering him on like a bunch of idiots. They didn't even bother to see what those Georgia Guidestones said, that, you know, the 500 million people. Well, what about the rest of the 7.5? Are they going to just go away? You know what I mean? No. This is the thing. People really got to really do their research, really open their mind, start invoking logic and seeing exactly what's really going on, and stop being blinded by the MAGA magic. Please stop it. Stop being blinded by what's, you know, as I said, this whole thing about the new rock stars of the right. Because they're going out there and it's not about the right or the left. It's not about the Republicans or Democrats. Q clearly says that as well. So President Trump has been doing all these things and exposing these entities done by design. Think about it. Do you think President Trump ever forgot about that? Do you think that, you know, he knows what Elon Musk has always been about? He'll stop advisory role if the US drops it. That's all there in the mainstream media. It's right there in black and white. The facts, evidence, and the receipts speak for themselves, ladies and gentlemen. You cannot dispute it. That's what I'm saying. Anyone that watches this show should be able to get it using their logic, providing that they use their logic and not put the blinders on. Because there are too many people out there that refuse to see the truth. They refuse to see what's really going on. They just sit there and they're just blinded. They don't look. I've seen it. For example, you'll see President Trump on Truth Social. He'll post something, and then all of a sudden you got the cheer squad, and you're thinking to yourself, "Well, let's have a look at what they're saying. What is the cheer squad saying? Is it relevant to what's been said in the post?" And no. So that indicates that there is some artificial intelligence being used, as far as, you know, there are certain, and you know, there are accounts that are being used and done by design by think about this. Artificial intelligence is basically something that it works using intelligence artificially. So what happens is it looks at the post, and what it tries to do is match it with something that is, shall we say, makes sense with what's being posted. But there are times where it's a hit and miss, and you can tell. So I'm looking at certain accounts and I'm questioning it, because I'm seeing these accounts, God in Country and all these other ones, and I've seen it where President Trump puts a post and then you'll see something that doesn't make any relevant sense. So you think to yourself, well, there's definitely AI being deployed. Definitely AI. And remember, AI is being used. We are living in the world of artificial intelligence. Now, have a look at this. President Trump, you know, there are things that he does to draw attention to the dangers of artificial intelligence. I mean, think about it. Melania just recently went out there and she did the Take It Down bill because of those using artificial intelligence against children, against teenagers, and using blackmail, right? So using that would use artificial intelligence, put the head of that person, artificial intelligence makes it look realistic that they're participating in questionable activities like porn. Then they say, listen, you better give us this, otherwise you're screwed. Or they'll screw them. And then what happens, ladies and gentlemen, there's been an increase in teenage suicide. So therefore the Take It Down bill was created. President Trump knows the evil of artificial intelligence. It's gotten out of hand and China has had control over it. That's why, remember, in order to take control over something, you've got to do things. President Trump needs to create the infrastructure for artificial intelligence to gain control because the genie is out of the bottle. Now, look at this one. One or more unknown people who accessed the White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles' personal cell phone used her contact files to reach out to top officials and impersonate her using AI. That's a threat of national security there, ladies and gentlemen. It's really serious business. One of the more unknown people accessed White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles' personal cell phone and used her contacts. Now, what are we seeing? We're seeing Signal being brought to the table, and we know that what Signal is, it's compromised, and we know it was used by Antifa. I did that whole decode on the Pulse, the previous Pulse. Please watch it. This is drawing attention to the AI dangers. And it's saying that they used her contacts of her phone. Now think about this for a moment. Do you think for a moment that let's be logical. You're talking about people that are high up in the chain. Don't think that they have the same systems that we have, the same phones that we have. They don't know. They work. They work on a really highly secure system. But what they're doing is drawing attention to the dangers of artificial intelligence. Now, what they're doing is they're saying, look, they're taking the recipients, okay, from her phone, and they're using AI to impersonate, her. And they're saying that could be continued on other platforms such as Telegram. Well, we know Signal has been brought out there. The White House take the cyber security of all staff very seriously. Now, what is this doing? Number one, it's bringing us to the dangers of AI, but also it's seeding mass consciousness. You got to look at it from this perspective. That they're seeding mass consciousness for cyber attacks. You heard correctly. Remember that movie Leave the World Behind and the cyber attacks? And you've been getting a taste of that using CrowdStrike. You remember that? That just happened long ago with the cyber attacks. They're preparing us for the major scare event. In the movie Leave the World Behind, you will see that there was North Korea involved, China, Russia, Iraq. What are we seeing? So Iran. Remember when they dropped the flyers in that movie, Leave the World Behind? It said death to America. And it was mentioned that Iran was involved. So what I'm thinking is, this is another way of preparing the mass consciousness for cyber attacks. Now, the other movies like Red Dawn and all these other movies that have been out there, that have been coming out there, is about cyber attacks. How they're going to do it. Artificial intelligence. It's all in the it's all out there in the movies as well. The dangers of artificial intelligence are also in the movies. So this is another way of bringing these things to the table, so to speak, into the mass consciousness. And preparing us, because think about this. In war, people think of, President Trump says, it's not tanks. It's not tanks firing here and there and that's war. No. We're in drone warfare now. He's telling us it's a game changer. Number one, we've got drone warfare. Drone warfare is also controlled by artificial intelligence. Then we've got the other thing that's going on, which is cyber attacks, power grids. President Trump has been saying that we need different type of power systems because the old grid, as he refers it to be, can be taken down by what? Cyber attacks. And we're getting prepared for that. And remember, everything that operates uses computers. But these are controlled military operations that are necessary in order to bring in the horror show. Number one, you got to bring the horror show to an end. But you got to also make everything, it's got to make sense to the mass consciousness. Number one, this scary necessary event that I keep speaking about in Q Drop 521 is very fundamental. Q clearly tells us this, that we are in control. The US military, do you trust the US military? Do you trust the chain of command? Not everything will be clean. Scare necessary event. Now think about this. They've been seeding us with all, and you can see that the world, look around you, is on fire. I mean, after all, get ready. As I said, and I've been saying this, ladies and gentlemen, I've been right all along, over and over again. I've even been, before Ukraine was, they had this thing with Russia, I said it. I called it years ago. I've been saying it over and over again, and I've been right. Everything that I've been saying is right because I've been, as I said, it's the events that determine where we are in the plan. Not everything will be clean, no. Scare necessary event. How else did you think you're going to get a worldwide EBS? How did you think? That's the question. You've got to use your logic. I mean, people got to start using their logic. You've got to, question everything. Now, the scare necessary event, we're living in scary, let's put it a horror show right now. Not everything, is basically, it's not the same. Nothing is the same. Everything is out of phase. The matrix is out of phase, done by design, because we've got to be pulled out of this whole system. You're watching the system, the old guard, being destroyed in real time right now. Remember, we've been put into a state known as the matrix. And people think about this whole thing about, I told you what it's all about. Controlling the mind. How do they control the mind? Bread and circus. Entertainment. That's a major part. Controlling the mind, mainstream media. Fed your daily dose of facts. Then you've been dumbed down with the education system that they call education, which is nothing more than grooming. Grooming to become a debt slave. Then you got this fear of the government, fear of this, fear of that, fear installed in you because fear controls you. Keeping people divided using religion, politics, even right down to the football team. That's how it's been done. Countries are proven how they've been designed, like the Middle East, how Israel was created to create destabilization. They created the Middle East, they created this whole destabilization, and they put Israel there. They created the state of Israel because that's where the three major religions are, and you control those three, you control basically the whole world. Now it's time for us to get out of this matrix. So you can see that everything is being brought out from dark to light because evil operates in the dark. Evil doesn't draw attention to it. That's how it gets away with it. No, focus over there. Focus over there where the bread and circus is, with Beyonce dancing, going to their concerts, watching reality TV show. You think that was done by coincidence? No, that was done by design. Watching the world of the influencer. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, because now we've got the influencers. Now, it's exactly what it is. That word influence is basically what it means. It influences the, shall we say, the masses. And you're seeing, ladies and gentlemen, how they've been part of this entertainment industry. Not like here, where you're getting all the facts and receipts and you're being empowered and you've been, think about it. Here, I'm taking you out of the matrix. Here, I'm showing you the truth. Over there, you're being put into a state of containment. Even those that sit there and they listen to the fairy tales of Nasara Jasara, RV, med beds, all this sort of thing, that's a state of entertainment. Because realistically speaking, what they're producing is all fiction, not facts. And they've been doing that for way too long, ladies and gentlemen. That's why I'm going to bring on the Kraken very soon. Now, this scare necessary event has to happen. Number one, people are focusing on the crypto. Oh, yes, we're worrying about our crypto going up. We're worrying about keeping ourselves rich. We've lost track of what we really, and remember, there are those, ladies and gentlemen, that started off in this movement for the children, and now the greed has taken over. Now they're focusing on is the crypto. They've lost sight of what they're really all about. What this movement is really all about is the truth. After all, it's about true freedom. Q has clearly said, focus on the mission. Does it say anywhere on the Q drops to focus on the crypto? Does it say anywhere in the Q drops to focus on getting rich? Or does it say true freedom? And what is true freedom, ladies and gentlemen? It's freedom of the mind. Getting out of that prison. And this scare necessary event must happen. Because let me tell you something, when this goes down and there's cyber attacks and all these things take place, people aren't going to be worrying about the stock market. People aren't going to be worrying about their crypto going up. They're going to be worrying about, are they going to see the next day? Are they going to see the light again? That's when they're going to be finding God within that hour, and they're going to be forgetting about their Bitcoin. And that's why I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen, that this financial crash is necessary. This scare necessary event is necessary in order for mankind to get closer to God. Because you know what? People have lost their way. And what does Scripture says? You can't serve two masters. You can't serve Mammon and God at the same time. You can only serve one master. And one master alone, and that's God. But no, you're seeing, ladies and gentlemen, even the ones that go to the church and do all this stuff, like all the grifting of these false prophets, it's sickening. It's really sickening. Because they're using God's name and Jesus' name and every name under the sun to enrich themselves. And to me, ladies and gentlemen, it's filth. You're seeing that we are living in the world of the influencer. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are. We are living in the world of the influencer, especially when we're seeing, let me show you something, the OnlyFans business, right? The $43 million Christian lady, the 20-year-old, the one that says it's okay, Sophie Rain, yeah, because she's reigning in the cash, that's an influencer right there, that she made $43 million last year, and it doesn't conflict with her Christian values. But that's okay. She can go and show off her breasts. She can go and show off, shall we say, her proverbial assets. She can go and basically digitally go and prostitute herself. Then she uses that money to buy a mansion and entice other Christian girls to go and do the same thing. Now, I'm sorry, that conflicts with God's values, no matter how you slice it and dice it. And believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, the creator of OnlyFans, because realistically speaking, she is an influencer, and we've been living in the world of the influencers. And the influencers have been getting rich and richer and richer. and keeping people dumbed down and contained and stupid. Because let me tell you something, any man that goes and follows this kind of garbage should really go and have a hard look at themselves. Okay, because you know what? This is exactly how they've been keeping us dumbed down. Entertainment, Hollywood, was run by the Zionists. Hollywood's been run by the Zionist Jews, ladies and gentlemen. So is the porn industry. That's a fact. And let me tell you something. You think OnlyFans is not run by them as well? Think again. Let me show you some hard facts, ladies and gentlemen. Because you know what? People really got to get what's going on. Number one, okay, did you know that OnlyFans donates $11 million to AIPAC? You heard correctly. They donate $11 million to AIPAC. And we know who AIPAC is. Meet the one that owns it. He happens to be a Ukrainian American Zionist Jew. His name is Leonard Redvinsky. Fact. And I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, this is all facts. You know, I only work with facts. He's a United Kingdom-based Ukrainian American billionaire businessman. Okay? He is Jewish. He is a Zionist. He's been giving his money, $11 million, to OnlyFans. There we go. His parent companies have been My Free Camps, and they're not anything good. They're to do with porn. OnlyFans, look at this right there. He is the owner of OnlyFans, 75% stake. Political activity, $11 million to AIPAC. Fact. This man right here, the OnlyFans made $1.3 million in a day. Then you got this one right here going around, Sophie Rain, telling us that it doesn't conflict with Christian values when we know what does it say in Scripture? That you can't serve two masters. Mammon or God, take your pick. And she's chosen Mammon, ladies and gentlemen, hands down. And this is the hypocrisy. And that's what I'm saying. This entity right here, AIPAC, is what has been what, ladies and gentlemen? Well, let me show you what they've been doing, and you know what they are all about. They're the ones that have been greasing off the Congress people. Oh, yes. Like Mr. John Kennedy for $215,814. Does he know that it comes from AIPAC? I'm sure he does. But let's turn a blind eye, John. Okay? That's the thing. Let's turn a blind eye. Like everybody else turns a blind eye. Todd Young, Republican. But it works on both sides of the aisle, doesn't it? You got Alice Stefanik, over 1 million. On the other side of the aisle, we got John Ossoff, United States Senator from Georgia, 759,000 plus. We got Byron Donalds at $88,728. And it goes on and on and on. So you're telling me that we should, that's why I keep bringing out about Rubio. He's over $1 million in AIPAC. So that money, think about where that money's been coming from. I've been showing you good old, that one of them has been OnlyFans. Now, do you see why President Trump speaks about these, you know, it brings these people to the, shall we say, under the microscope. He's doing it, oh, no, I'm part of you. No, it's okay. He's playing the game. People don't realize that He thinks that he's been sold off by them. I mean, after all, Hillary was on 4 million with AIPAC. Hillary. And you see how it's all connected up. And then you're telling me, oh no, it's Christian, that's okay. No, there's nothing Christian about it. Don't use these excuses, because that money right there, ladies and gentlemen, that people are going off and, and watching these OnlyFans debauchery, because guess what? Not only have we been sucking in 20-year-old Christian girls, but pillars of society, teachers, police, everything you can possibly imagine, they're gone to OnlyFans now and spreading their legs digitally. They're prostituting themselves, and they're making millions and millions of dollars, and those millions of dollars are going to your Congress people. Right there. Now, can you see why I bring this up? Can you see why you come here? Because you're going to get the facts, evidence, and receipts. And that's what I'm saying. These others are saying, oh, why are you putting it this? Why are you trying to cause a grift? Like as in not a grift. As in problems. Why are you trying to do this, FCB? Why are you trying to cause problems? No, I'm trying to bring the attention to the facts, evidence, and receipts. And if you don't want to get with it because you want to believe the MAGA magic that's out there, well, go right ahead. But you can see, ladies and gentlemen, that they're both connected to this. They're all connected to this. And just to think that your Congress people, no wonder they don't want to get rid of OnlyFans. Because it's their cash cow. Think about it. It makes sense, doesn't it? That's what it's all about. Now, what is President Trump? You remember, yes, let's talk about this. Never forget that face right there. OnlyFans connected to AIPAC. Right there. Now, you heard President Trump speak about certain things. In his rallies, you've heard him say about the bacon. Oh, bacon's going up. What does he mean by bacon? Money. Money, ladies and gentlemen. And you know who doesn't eat bacon? It's the shall we say, the Zionists and all that sort of stuff. He's trying to bring to our attention the bacon, all right? But which bacon is he trying to bring attention to? You know it's all about the money. We know that they've been greased off by both sides of the aisle. President Trump says things for a reason, that bacon's gone up. In other words, someone's been greased off. Bacon again, greased off. What does this mean? Well, I'm going to show you what it means. Because people got to know, when President Trump talks about the bacon, he's talking about this character right here, Don Bacon, who happens to be a Republican, and his money has gone up. He's made a lot more money, ladies and gentlemen. The bacon has been increasing in price. Who do you think President Trump speaks about? The bacon, the cost. Why does he keep saying bacon? Five. He's telling us to pay attention. I'm trying to give you comms. Bacon. The bacon's gone up, all right. Go to Don Bacon, and the bacon's gone through the roof over to close to $1.3 million. And there you go. All greased up. Oh, yes, greased up, all right. And it's time that people really got to get what's going on. And I've shown you, I know the Soaring Sparrow says, let me just bring that up. I went to the high school, let me just see, with Don Bacon. Laugh out loud, not that guy. Well, you're seeing right there. And you could see, Soaring Sparrow, that Mr. Bacon over there has been bringing home the bacon, and President Trump has been giving us those comms. And also, think about, everything's got to do with spending. Yeah, I agree, Nathan. I agree with that too. The pork in the food and all that. I mean, as in the pork. They call the pork as in the unnecessary spending, but we know that's all to do with the corruption. But Remember, President Trump is somebody that speaks in multiple meanings. That's one of them right there. Can you see? And then just to think, as I said, ladies and gentlemen, just think about this. Right? How do you expose these entities? You've got to allow them to expose themselves. You've got to allow them to take home the bacon, to bring up the bacon. And then you could see when you connect the dots, as I've shown you with the facts and some receipts, that this entity right here has been given $11 million to AIPAC and many, many others. And where do you think this money, and you know what OnlyFans is all about? It's about the most debauchery crap you can possibly imagine out there. Fetishes, women with all, they go out there and you pay a subscription fee. Let me show you, ladies and gentlemen, just so you, and please, you know, I'm about the facts, evidence, and receipts here. Have a look at this. This is OnlyFans. OnlyFans, ladies and gentlemen, you will find, shall we say, the worst of the worst of the worst possible for a price. Subscription fees, ladies and gentlemen. Look at that. Meet OnlyFans. It's like the, shall we say, it looks like a Twitter app, but it's full of porn. And anybody can go on there, you know, and become an OnlyFans person. And they make millions and millions of dollars, you know, doing all this debauchery because, yeah, they'll show you the pictures. But if you want to know, show more and see her spread her legs and do all these other nasty stuff and having sex and doing sex acts with dolls and whatever else in between, you will find it here on OnlyFans. And just to think that this application, these influencers right there are influencing your Congress people. Oh, yes. And they're doing it using a mechanism known as AIPAC, which is the Jewish lobbyists. Now, can you see, ladies and gentlemen, why President Trump is exposing the deep state, and he's doing it by design and creating their own little, shall we say, Trumpy's little horror show for them. Mr. Bacon, all right, he's bringing home the bacon from AIPAC. And just to think, have a look at that number right there, that money has been coming from, that's just one entity known as OnlyFans. And you could see, oh yes, Grindr. That's another application. All these other applications, they're all Zionists, ladies and gentlemen. They're Zionists. The Grindr have also contributed. This is the thing, people don't realize that the porn industry contributes to AIPAC. And I'm showing you one way of how they're doing it using OnlyFans, but there's Grindr app, which is Grindr, ladies and gentlemen, is for gay people and all the debauchery you could possibly imagine, dates and all that. They go and funnel money in these directions as well. And then you have these guys right here playing the Christian. Oh, please, the hypocrisy. You got them playing the Christian game, the Christian card. Oh, Lord this and God that. The only God or Lord they serve is Mammon. Because they can play the God card, they can play the good Christian card like, you know, Miss Sophia Rain or Sophie Rain, and saying that it doesn't conflict with her Christian values. They can slice it and dice it whatever which way they like. At the end of the day, we know what it is. And just like Mr. Don Bacon, and just like Tom Cotton, and just like all the others that have been greased up by AIPAC, are turning the blind eye and playing that little Christian card, that little holy card of theirs, their God card, and they're being greased off. And the only one that's been speaking up about it is Thomas Macy. And then they turn around, these others, and they have the audacity to point the finger at Thomas Macy and make him look like the bad guy. Where realistically speaking, he's telling you what AIPAC's all about.
Everybody but me has an AIPAC person.
What's that mean, an AIPAC person?
It's like your babysitter, your AIPAC babysitter, who is always talking to you for AIPAC. They're probably a constituent in your district, but they are firmly embedded in AIPAC. And
Every member has something like this?
that's how it works on the Republican side. And when they come to DC, you go have lunch with them. And they've got your cell number, and you have conversations with them.
That's absolutely crazy.
I've had 4 members of Congress say, I'll talk to my AIPAC person. And it's literally what we call them, my AIPAC guy. I'll talk to my AIPAC guy and see if I can get him to dial those ads back.
Why have I never heard this before?
Why would they want to tell their constituents that they've basically got a buddy system with somebody who's representing a foreign country? It doesn't benefit the congressman for people to know that, so they're not going to tell you that.
And they're telling us that Macy's bad. This is what I'm saying. And then there are those in this movement that go around and say that he's bad and this really, yet they go and praise all these others. Oh, yes, no. John Kennedy is good. Oh, but he's good enough to take $215,814 from AIPAC. Tom Cotton, he's for the state of Arkansas. He's for his own pocket. He's been greased off at 1.2 million. And you know where they come from, ladies and gentlemen. It all comes from that direction. You know that this industry of debauchery is basically funding these entities over here. And you could see, what does Q says? Follow the money. Well, that's what we're doing, ladies and gentlemen. We're following the money. And the money's taking us to places, and we know, realistically speaking, that President Trump and Macy are like this. They're working hand in hand at exposing the deep state, because at the end of the day, there's also Democrats that are working with the White Hats. You do realize that, because Q says it's not about Republicans or Democrats. It's not about the left or the right. This is about preserving our way of life. If America falls, the world falls. Patriots on guard, Q. President Trump has created this little horror show for them for a reason. And this is the thing. You got to draw out these characters. You got to lull them into a sense of false security. Because when the time does come, and we know what's coming, ladies and gentlemen, is in Q drop 34. That time is coming, and it's coming very near. Where it will be when President Trump puts a temporary military control, as per the War Manual 11.4, will be put under temporary military control. President Trump wants to be a dictator for the day. He will be. Because it will be capturing more senior public officials. And people think about Hillary and Obama. No, think bigger. Think bigger, ladies and gentlemen. And think about this. That basically, what are they doing? They're doing false leaks. They're playing the optical card. President Trump's playing the neutral card. So these entities don't go running. Because the net is coming closer and closer, and it's going to go and trap them. And we're heading towards this. But we are waiting for the arrest announcement of Mr. Podesta, aren't we? That's what we're waiting for. Now we're getting more and more of these comms. For example, right? Like, what do we see? Just recently, by no coincidence, have we been seeing this, ladies and gentlemen. Anthony Weiner has making headlines again. Just recently. Would that be a way of giving us comms and letting us know that get ready for Podesta? Pretty much. We know what that Weiner laptop contains. Huma Aberdeen, Hillary Clinton, and all the other insurance file that he's got there. And why are they bringing out that entity? Because we know what it means. Now, you go and ask somebody like your neighbour that's not following what we're following, for example. You say Anthony Weiner, who is he? We don't know who he is. He's not a big enough name. Even John Podesta, we know that it's a marker, but for who? For us. Because not everybody reads the Q drops. Not everyone follows the Q drops and respects the Q drops. Let me make that very clear. So President Trump is obviously doing things in a way to also let his digital army know and show what's going on. Now, as I said, Anthony Weiner, we know that he's the one that's got the laptop with the insurance file. That's for us. That's all been done by design. I would say that things are coming more and more to the forefront. You know, they put Mark Carney, that is the Prime Minister of Canada. Mark Carney is connected to Podesta. I've said that it's got to fall underneath somebody that is basically involved in the filth. We know that Carney is also connected to Trudeau. Everything is going to connect up. Everything's going to make sense. But it's like somebody that's arranging a jigsaw puzzle. We don't know what the end result, like, you know, as in when the pieces fall, where they fall, all that sort of stuff. We only know when those pieces have fall into those positions. Events determine where we are in the plan. Now, how this is all going to go down, only they know. Those that claim to sign NDAs lie. Those that claim to have insider contacts lie. Q has clearly said that about the insiders club, right? That those that claim to be insiders are liars. Free information, oh, but they give us free information. Yeah, that's the lure, that's the bait. Because guess what? They create this little bait of theirs, so then they can get you hooked on the hopium. Oh, I've got to know more what they got. You know, no. If you want to know more, you got to pay, because you got the bait, which is the free information. Now, if you want to know more before, and they say you'll know before anybody else, so that's another lure. And they all claim to be part of this insider club. They all do these little theatrics. They all do these little games of theirs. And Q says, we don't work this way. Patriots do not reveal classified information. And then there are those that play the veteran, as in, oh, because I'm a veteran, I know I have the insider take. No, you don't. Because you should be, number one, you should be ashamed of yourself. Anyone that claims to be, you know, that uses their little veteran cards to have inside take, that they're ex-military, they know what's going on. Because you know how the military work. Those on the lower level need to know basis. Do you think for a moment that they're going to go around and jeopardize any operations by blabbermouthing anything out there? Seriously. And these entities play this game that I'm a veteran and I know better than you, and you're a bunch of civvy Q-tards. Because civilians. In other words, that entity right there is just creating division. That entity basically started off in, you know, I'm Q and this and that. I mean, as in being part of this Q movement. Once they infiltrated, they decided to go in the other direction, and they're showing their true colours. To me, ladies and gentlemen, that would be part of the deep state. Those who claim to be part of the insiders say that they've signed NDAs. It's a lie. Those who said that, you know, they've got a gag order. It's a lie. It's lie upon lie upon lie. Q says clearly that they do not operate that way. Expand your thinking. Q drop 1339. Why are we attacked? Why are we being attacked by people who claim to be pro-POTUS? Do we have a face? Do we have a name? We are selfless. Right? We do this because we are fighting for true freedom. Do we use our platforms where we collect followers? For them, it's about e-stardom. And you can see this, ladies and gentlemen, that there are those that have been using this movement because, to create is stardom for themselves and to create a huge following because it equates to money. Number one, monetization. Number two, they get to sell their subscription fees. Number three, they get to sell their wares. It's about zero vanity. It's selfless. We're all in this together. Where we go one, we go all. I've always said that from the very beginning. Not one is above each other. Why are we here? Why do we ask questions? Because we want knowledge, because knowledge empowers us with the truth. The choice has always been yours. It has been. But there are those, unfortunately, that get sucked in. We choose to use logic. However, there are others that are drawn in by the free information that has been given to them by those entities to lure them as bait, in order to lure them so they can come in and say, well, guess what? We've given you that free information, but if you'd like to know more, they claim to be part of the insiders club, and we know that they play that game. We know that they use their little subscription as a means to draw in people into their subscription, shall we say, their little net. They use the free information as a bait. People get hooked on the hopium. People get hooked on the belief that they know what they're talking about. They play the theatrical game. And because of this, they're expanding exponentially because there's so much people that would rather believe entertainment rather than what is facts, evidence, and receipts and harsh truth. Because they all claim to play the insider game. They all claim to be part of the insider club. You've seen the one that goes around and says he controls the five and he's number 6. You've seen the one that claims to have credibility being a doctor, but we've proven that he's not a doctor using facts, evidence, and receipts. They do not. They're not part of the insider contacts. They do not have insider contacts. They are not insiders. Patriots, meaning the military, do not reveal classified information. Why do we communicate this way using comms? Think for yourself. Q wants us to use our logic. Q wants us to use the Socratic method so we can use this. Others fall for the clickbait. And what is Q? Military intelligence. Military intelligence, somebody that foresaw and knew that they were going to use this movement to enrich themselves. That's why they made statements to let people know, be careful who you follow. Q says that we are a threat to their profiteering. We are a threat, especially the real digital warriors, God's army. Information should flow freely. We've been giving that information freely here on the Freedom Channel broadcast. Everything that I provide, ladies and gentlemen, is given freely. It's not put behind a paywall. I don't ask people to pay for subscriptions. I've proven my mettle. I've proven who I'm loyal to. And I'm loyal, number one, to everybody as far as the people that, our movement. I'm loyal to President Trump, and I'm also loyal to military intelligence as well, known as Q. Being a decoder, I take what I say seriously, and I'm basing everything on facts, evidence, receipts, and using logic. Information should flow freely without costs. What do? They put things behind a paywall. Why don't they read this Q drop and bring this to the forefront, since the one that's a doctor that's not a doctor, that has the red fiery Q next to him, why doesn't he bring out this Q drop and many others? Because it contradicts what they're all about. We are establishing a series of proofs, and these proofs are undeniable using mathematical impossibilities and series of comms. Like I just showed you President Trump. He is Q+, and I've shown you this based on facts, evidence, and receipts. When you go to his Truth Social and you see that it's on his Truth Social, that he's retruthing the ones with a post. He's actually not retruthing, he's posting it with a Q+. And I've shown you this. This is visible. So you can't dispute this. To call us a bunch of civic Q-tards, To call us all these names is to call President Trump those names as well, being Q+, who is our leader. He's been giving us undeniable, unpredictable coincidence after coincidence. How many coincidences before you call this mathematically impossible? That's why we go through a series of mathematical impossibilities and giving validity to what Q is telling us and Q+. Real sources communicate with the people. In other words, Q is communicating with people. We've seen what Q is, military intelligence. Back channels are important. This is the back channel that Q speaks about. The drops. Unrestricted means not behind a paywall, like the others have been putting things behind a paywall when they're too busy enriching themselves with sponsors and basically sponsors, pushing their sponsor cards, sponsorship, ads, focusing on selling merchandise rather than focusing on bringing out the truth, playing their little theatrical games, trying to sell their subscriptions. They're restricting that information, and their information, realistically speaking, is a bunch of garbage to begin with in the first place. They are selling hopium, they are selling lies, they are selling deception. They're basically selling what people want to hear, which isn't the real truth. Together, we're all in this together. Where we go one, we go all. Means something to me, and it means something to everybody here. Control the information. They try to by establishing a network, just like the mainstream media have established a network, and they're able to use an echo chamber effect by creating a whole heap of them, not just one, but many, and bouncing off each other and going to their shows one to another. And you see these circle jerkers going to one show to another, regurgitating the same information over and over again, using the same entities. It's creating an echo chamber effect, otherwise known in the real world, the mainstream media, based on that model, based on the same principles. They are controlling the information. They also deploy bots. They buy and purchase bots, that is fact as well, to increase their numbers on their views. So people are basically deceived into believing that they think that this entity knows what they're talking about, and entities like Rumble, YouTube, and many other places are using, and allowing these bots to give these false readings to the people, an illusion, deception, that they've got so many followers or views watching their videos, done by design to harness followers, to deceive them into believing that they know what they're talking about, where they should be coming here and being empowered with the real truth. Profiteering, they are profiteering. Define media. Media, the word media, ladies and gentlemen, means to be impartial, in the middle. That's why I took it upon myself to take on the course and become an international journalist, an investigative journalist, to match my skill sets with my qualifications. Now I can call myself a journalist, basically, and becoming true to that word media, meaning impartial. Primary goal of the media is to remain impartial, to give the truth rather than lie, to sway to the left or to sway to the right or to sway towards the narrative that they're trying to predict. They're trying to sell, these entities, and they're selling to make money. That's why Q says, be careful who you follow. Define the patriot, not with a Y, ladies and gentlemen. A patriot, somebody, as Q drop 1295 says, that's somebody that is willing to sacrifice everything. And I've done it, ladies and gentlemen. I've put everything on the line. I've sacrificed everything, and I've given everything that I know to you. No restrictions, no costs, nothing. And what they're trying to do is basically divide our movement. And how they divide it is basically by creating shall we say, that little echo chamber effect by consolidating with other like-minded con artists out there. And what they do is basically, you can consider them to be the deep state as well. Because what they do is they work together. You see them on each other's shows. That's an indicator right there. They're too busy circle jerking, regurgitating, putting everything in a spin cycle, and they're bouncing everything off each other. So if you heard it there, you heard it over here. You heard it over here, you heard it over this show. You heard it at that show, you heard it on the doctor that's not a doctor. You heard it on the one that thinks he's a spy, but not a spy. You hear it all over the place. And basically, you've got an echo chamber system going on. Then it trickles down to all the others because they want us divided. And divided, we are weak. And by exposing these entities, what they're trying to do is create division about the ones that really want to bring the word truth into the movement. And the attacks have been getting worse and worse. You've been seeing, ladies and gentlemen, that we have been, how can I say, attacked on many levels. Not only have we been attacked by them, but also we've been attacked by the as I said, social media. If you don't conform to whatever you've been told to conform to, like I've been told, you better do this, you better do that, and I've said no. I'm not going to do a sponsorship. I'm not going to dance to anybody's tune. In fact, I'm going to bring out the truth. And because of that, ladies and gentlemen, nobody wants to hear the truth. This is the road least traveled. This road right here. And guess what? The others, the multitudes, the masses in this movement would rather listen to the delusional fools. They're not fools, the ones that are spreading the disinformation. They know what they're doing. Clickbaiters. The ones that are spreading about the Nasara Jasara lies and deceptions. The ones that are spreading about the med beds. The ones that are spreading about the RV. The ones that have been spreading about all these things to enrich themselves and basically hook people into the hopium, the drug that, that basically is built on lies. That's why they choose not to come here. Because they'd rather they're hooked on that drug. And they will pay. That's why they pay a subscription fee. And that by doing that are enabling their behavior to continue. And that's why I say, ladies and gentlemen, if you're going to continue enabling that behavior, you're part of the problem. You're not part of the solution. That is fact. And it's time for people to start making a right decision, the correct decision. And that is to stop enabling these characters, because the more you enable them, the more they're going to continue to, to do what they're doing. The more they're going to try and divide this movement. This is war. It literally is on many fronts. This is not a little computer game or we're playing. No, this is real life stuff. Just because we're not in the battlefield shooting people or shooting the enemy, it doesn't mean this is not a battlefield. This is the digital battlefield, and it's been fought. This war has been fought on many fronts. The war for the mind. That's what it is, ladies and gentlemen. We are in a psychological war. We're in mind warfare, and mind warfare is this, that we are battling to free minds. Now, how can we free minds where they continue to fall in the meat grinder over there? When people are saying, oh yes, he's got lots of numbers, this guy doesn't. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Can you see how they manipulate social media? And the thing is, how can Rumble, how can YouTube, how can all these other social media platforms allow this to continue? Because they themselves are being enriched by these bots. That's why. And I'm about bringing out the facts, evidence, and receipts. This is the battle of the mind that we're in right now. As I said, we're in multiple battles. We've got the battle that's going on out there. There are, as I said, there's things like future-proofs past, controlled military operations that are necessary to bring out the truth and to make sense to the mass consciousness, to get their support. Now think about it. Had you not had October the 7th happen, as President Trump says, why does he say that? Because realistically speaking, that's exactly what this means. October equals 10 and 7th day, 10 plus 7 equals Q, 17. That means we know that this is all definitely a white hat, shall we say, production, in order to get the masses to turn against the former, shall we say, masters, the Zionist masters that have been controlling Hollywood, have been controlling mankind using the financial system. Can you see there's a huge flip done by design? And everything is coming to an end, ladies and gentlemen. When I saw this, that Bibi's bombs, that Bibi bomb, meaning Netanyahu, Iran, we will start bombing Iran, when President Trump said not to do it. And the false prophets out there like Julie Green and the gang, and you've seen that going on out there, Paul the White Cane, about Bibi Netanyahu being fantastic. He's great. He's the chosen one of Israel. And now we got these others trying to make excuses. This is what I'm saying. It's an insult to my intelligence, especially when I've exposed Julie Green, Paul the White Cane, and many other of these false prophets in supporting Bibi Netanyahu and his agenda. And now they're trying to backpedal using their followers. No, don't bother. You know I've got all the facts and receipts. You know I've shown the videos. God doesn't know that. According to God, you're the prophet and you're making these prophecies. So what, you're telling us that God got it wrong? That God gave you the wrong information? No, sorry. That doesn't fly with me either. Okay? That's the reality of it. Don't listen to the garbage of these entities, because you know what? The jig's up. The jig's up. And they're trying, these followers of theirs, they're so delusional. So delusional, ladies and gentlemen, like these ones that follow the idiot that thinks he's Edward Snowden and trying to make out that he hasn't done this and he hasn't done that. They are so delusional, so wrapped up in his bullshit, so wrapped up in the hopium, the drug, I don't know, the hypnosis the spells that they put these people under. Honest to God, I don't know. It doesn't make any logical sense. It's time for them to snap out of it. Or are they under the category that Q says? What does Q tell us? That 4 to 6% will never wake up, even presented with the facts and receipts that I've shown them. Maybe you've got to extend that number to 46 or 64, whatever it is. Make it bigger, because you've got to include those idiots in there as well. Those idiots that, are so delusional that they can't see past any reason or logic at all. Now, as I said, ladies and gentlemen, we are heading towards the end game. Bibi bombs Iran from tomorrow, meaning Sunday, today. Let's talk about Iran, Israel time over there. It's going to happen. Now, why would Israel give Iran the heads up and say, we're going to go and bomb this? Think about it. Number one, you got domestic flights, as I said before. You got to let them know, and there could be diplomatic flights, all these things going on there. No, they've got to give them the heads up. Now, remember, these are controlled military operations. Now, the Khamenei, which is the Iran leader, has said, we've got to free up the airspace, close down the airports, everything's shutting down. Netanyahu is getting ready to basically bring on the bombs onto a nuclear power plant to take down, because the thing is, Think about this. Israel, back in the day of Dimona, they created and enriched the uranium, and JFK basically said, if you do that, the US is pulling out. And not long after that, he was assassinated. So it's okay for Israel to have control. Israel wants to be the only one in the Middle East that has access to nuclear bombs. They want to be the one in control. And now, this is it. This is it, ladies and gentlemen. Now, they've been trying to rope in, as I said, President Trump, the US, into this war against Iran. And President Trump says, I want to make a deal. Whereas it's backfired on Netanyahu. And you know that Israel are notorious for doing false flag operations. As I said, USS Liberty, Savannah. We know what that's all about. I decoded that. I did the whole thing. I showed you. And there are other ones. 9/11, which people are going to find out. That's why Q says leaving Israel for last. It's too harsh. Think about it when you know that Israel were behind the bombing of 9/11. How's it going to make people feel? Think about that. When people find out the truth that they've been behind doing these little stages, like, for example, Port Arthur in Australia, when they took away our guns and they used these things, these little false flag events, they got their finger in every pie, together with the CIA. Think about how that's going to make people feel. That's why Israel for last. Epstein Island, that honeypot operation, connected over there as well through the, Ghislaine Maxwell, her dad, Robert Maxwell, Mossad asset. Think about that. Think about how it's going to make people feel. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, let me roll this clip. This is what's about to come.
שומע? וואו, 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 וואו! וואו! הכל נופל לנבטים, אני אומר לך, מתקפה אחת החזקות. אימא'לה, 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 זהו, למקלט.
That's what's coming, ladies and gentlemen, and I think this is just the beginning. Iran attacks Israel with hundreds of missiles. They're getting ready. They're getting ready. You could see that things are escalating. Now let's talk about that. What's going on? Remember, you got Israel that together with Turkey that went and took over Syria using a proxy. Using somebody that was a leader of ISIS or involved with Al-Qaeda. They installed somebody. Now that that jig's up, Turkey, you know what Turkey is all about. Turkey has promised its people that it's going to take over Israel and take them to the steps of Jerusalem. Now think about this. You're going to have Israel is at war at the Houthis at the moment. So the Houthis are at war. Yemen are at war with Israel. You got that going on. Then you got Israel at war with Iran. They're going after their nuclear sites, and President Trump said, don't do it. They're going against President Trump. Now think about this. Israel is spreading themselves thin. What would be the opportune moment to go and take over Israel? It would be when they're busy, when they're spread thin. Well, don't be surprised you see Turkey step in. And you see Erdogan take it where it needs to go. Leaving Israel for last, ladies and gentlemen, has many meanings. Another thing is Iran is also a strategic partner with Russia. You heard correctly. They're a strategic partner with Russia. Now, this is the thing. I mean, there's going to be so many things going on. I mean, you got that going on. You got the Russia-Ukraine thing going on as well. Nothing slowed down. In fact, Russia went and bombed the Ukraine with a series of drone attacks. And then you got President Trump that's saying, oh, we're going to get together and do this. And this is all stalling. This is all, shall we say, preparing. Because the thing is, why do they keep pumping money in the Ukraine? Why does Germany want to keep pumping money in the Ukraine? Like $5.1 billion. Just recently, euro actually. I think it was 5.1 billion euro. Why? Out of their good graces? No. Now, this is the thing. 5 billion, sorry. Berlin offers Kiev another 5 billion euro. 5 billion euro so they can start producing long-range arms. So this is another way of the EU and the NATO forces indirectly involving themselves in this war without bringing in the Ukraine under the NATO. But no, France is going to take, they say they want to put them under the nuclear umbrella. Then you got Berlin that's offering $5 billion. Think about that. Who cares about the people? Berlin will provide Kiev with another 5 billion euro in military aid on top of the $28 billion that it's given already. Why? Because you know why? Because they know that they got to protect their investment in the Ukraine. They've got to protect all the debauchery. The Ukraine has been a cash cow. As I said, it's a conduit, a way of putting money in to get money back out. It's like the Iran deal. It's basically about money, ladies and gentlemen, going to people's pockets. It's also about containing all the debauchery to do with the biolabs, child trafficking, human trafficking, all the things that you could possibly imagine that has taken place in the Ukraine. Why keep pumping our billions of dollars in there? And it's not just Europe or, no, it's Australia, it's Canada. The Western world keeps pumping money into the Ukraine. And when are people going to wake up? There are things that, people need, infrastructure. There are things, no, let's keep pumping the money in protecting their borders. In other words, they're trying to bring in the Ukraine in a way of indirectly, you got to get this, being part of the EU indirectly, playing this little game of theirs and using the NATO card as well. Like Germany's giving them $5 billion to make long-range missiles. So then it's like this. Here you go. Here's the money. You go and make it. It's not connecting to us. We're not involving ourselves. However, they're the ones that are behind it, pulling the strings. That's what it is. Now, the thing is, you're seeing that going on. The foreign minister of Germany is basically saying, no, we're not giving them the Taurus missiles. Because we know that defeating Russia is impossible. However, here's the $5 billion. You go and make it. We'll give you the funds to continue doing it. What, do you think they're doing it to protect the Ukraine and their good graces to help the people? Think again. There's always a reason and a rhyme, and they're connected to it. It's protecting their little slush fund, their little conduit, protecting their dirty secrets called the Ukraine. And that's what it's all about. Another thing is, ladies and gentlemen, what they're doing, NATO, is the Ukraine is wiring its Patriot F-16, so the F-16s, Mirage 2000s, and uplinking it to the NATO systems, known as Link 16 systems. And it lets allied forces, so while they're fighting Russia, NATO is sharing data on how to beat Russia in real time on the combat, like, you know, when they're when they're fighting. Ukrainian Deputy Defense Minister reports full integration with NATO's air command network. So can you see, so much for a non-membership? Can you see how sly, how they're working? So they're saying, no, we're not going to give you the missiles. You go and make it. Here's the money. No, you connect up to our systems and we'll give you the knowledge that you need, but you connect up to our systems. However, you're not a member. Can you see how they're indirectly involving themselves in this war? Done by design. Now, Macron has gone out there and he's threatening China now. So not only have we got that going on, not only have we got the thing that's going on in Israel and Iran, but now we've got Macron that's threatening China with NATO expansion. So Macron's going out there and making threats to China. And remember, what was NATO created for? Basically expanding, taking over, bringing in the Nazi world order. There's nothing new about it, as Q says, new world order, Nazi world order, control. And then you got Macron that's going out there making threats to China. Then you got this guy right here that's doing the same thing. Mr. Pete Hegseth, and we know where his allegiance lies to, is the state of Israel once again. And I've proven that over and over again. He was a never Trumper to begin with. And I got onto the Truth Bomb section. Go and look at it. Hegseth says the US will stand by Indo-Pacific allies, another way of causing problems. So you've got this tension going on, and you know what he's talking about, lethality, being this, being that. President Trump is sitting back and watching this all play out. Then he says China will not invade Taiwan. Now, China said don't get involved. People don't realize why Taiwan was created. Taiwan is another black site that was created by, shall we say, the proverbial deep state. It's all to do with control. It's all to think about. You think about it. It's all about control. And he's saying that Taiwan was always part of China. Now, he says that if deterrence fails, we will fight and win decisively. Fighting against China. Oh, that's lovely, Pete. He's got no intention about peace. Macron is going around with using the NATO card and saying going up against China as well. Then you've got all the other stuff that's going on with Iran and Israel. Israel's going to bring down the bombs, because, about Iran having nuclear capabilities. They don't want that. They only want to be the only ones that have access to nukes, so therefore they got control over the Middle East. It's all about control. That's what it's all about. Let's have a listen to this, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, they're very close to an agreement on Gaza, and we'll let you know about it during the day or maybe tomorrow, and we have a chance of that. And I think we have a chance of making a deal with Iran also. They don't want to be blown up. They would rather make a deal, and I think that could happen in the not-too-distant future. That would be a great thing if we could have a deal without bombs being dropped all over the Middle East. That would be a very good thing. They can't have a nuclear weapon. We want them to be safe. We want them to have a very, very successful nation. Let it be a great nation, but we can't have that. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. It's very simple. And I think we're fairly close to a deal with Iran.
مقامات آمریکایی هم میگوییم ما برای هر سناریویی آماده هستیم. کشور ما هرگز تسلیم اراده سیاسی دیگران نمی شود. ما در عرصه دفاعی مسلطیم، همواره برای غلبه بر بزرگترین قدرت جهان قدرت انباشته ایم. این فرض ما بوده است که ما در یک نبرد بزرگ با یک قدرت بزرگ درگیر خواهیم شد.
Rightio. I would say a deal with Iran is not dealing with a snake, it's dealing with Israel. Let's get that one right. And these are controlled military operations that are taking place. Now, Q has clearly told us that the Iran regime has been taken down. This is all controlled military operations. How else did you think you were going to get a scare necessary event? You got to really use your logic. And as I said, ladies and gentlemen, I've been right all along. Turkey, Syria's al-Shara, which is the president of Syria. Remember what I said? When Israel does what it does, what's the best time to go after Israel? When it's spread thin. Now remember, Erdogan, you want to call a snake? He's a snake. He's promised his people that he's going to what? Take them to the gates of Jerusalem. And that's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, it's coming. You see that he's gotten together with Syria, so there's some business going on. Remember, Syria is right next to Israel. Remember when Netanyahu went and saw President Trump, and what did he say? Did we forget? That he was complaining about Erdogan. How Erdogan, and then President Trump congratulated Erdogan and said, you've done something that hasn't been done in so many thousands of years. And he's, remember, Erdogan has promised his people that he's going to take over Israel and take him to Jerusalem. He knows that Israel was created by the Cabal. He knows what he's doing. And could it be a means, a way of bringing down Israel? Anything is possible. Remember, it's got to make sense to the masses. So it was no surprise, ladies and gentlemen, that I saw this. It actually confirms my analysis. It confirms my analysis in the sense that I've said that Erdogan has bigger plans. That he installed, together with the blessings of Netanyahu. See, Netanyahu made a deal with the devil, and now there's a price to pay. Now Netanyahu knows that he's trying to obviously get rid of the threats of Iran because they want to have the only, shall we say, control over the nukes of the Middle East. So therefore, you've got to get rid of your opponent having access to those nuclear weapons. And they try to use the United States as a means to try and get the United States to go and fight directly with Iran. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to crunch time. You can see that things are getting very, very serious. And my analysis has been 120% correct. As I said, do you call it a coincidence that this happens just recently? No, there are none. And I've been saying it for a very long time, that we are heading towards a massive, scare, necessary event. I've been saying that, and those who have been watching me for a very long time have seen that my message has been consistent. And every time I've said it, everything that I've said has been right, spot on. Now, remember, things need to be played a certain way. President Trump has created his own horror show for them. The deep state could never envision such a horror show. And you know what? It's all been done by design. As I said, you turn it around and you basically gaslighting even the deep state. The deep state are even questioning their reality. And when I mean the deep state, the ones that are, shall we say, deep-rooted. They're the ones he's trying to draw out. Remember, plants are everywhere. The deep state comes in many manifestations. Can we call AIPAC the Jewish, Congress, the Jewish Committee? Can we call them part of the deep state? Yes, they are. After all, don't they influence both sides of the aisle? I've proven that. Both sides, Republicans and Democrats. President Trump says, I belong to the party of common sense. You've even seen that Mr. Bacon. That's why President Trump talks about the bacon going up. He's been greased off by AIPAC. So I would say definitely the deep state are operating, but he's taken control. That's the difference. It's control. The deep state are no longer in control, and those that are, basically, how can I say, they know that the jig's up. President Trump is playing this optical neutral card done by design, and it's making the deep state even more nervous. That's what it's done. He's using these psychological operations to bring them down, and it's basically gaslighting them, and they're even questioning their own reality right now. Now, as I said, think about this. Back in the day when the CIA were running North Korea as their own little black site, we know that's to be true. Remember when North Korea were basically shooting off rockets and they were going pear-shaped and people were laughing? That's exactly what they wanted you to do. What's to laugh about it? The deep state. Because you know what? They made it that North Korea didn't have the technology, but they have been having that technology all along, all hidden. While you were watching those rockets going into, shall we say, the proverbial drink, into the sea and going pear-shaped and blowing up, they were actually creating them in the mountain, somewhere where you weren't seeing them. Look over here, don't look over there. Now have a look at this. This is a future-proof past scenario, as I said. Satellite picture of a blue tub. I mean, you can't get any, shall we say, bigger than that. You know what I mean? Like a blue tub to draw your attention to, And that's exactly what it's doing. I mean, those who know, like we know that this is basically a distraction. And it's a future-proof past. They're showing that the North Korea naval ship destroyer is basically a failed launch. That's exactly what they want the masses to believe. It's another future-proof past scenario. Do you think for a moment that the real naval ship would be there in a blue tarp and in pieces and floating with little buoys or whatever around it? No. That's the distraction. That's exactly what they've been doing. Future-proof past. It's exactly what's going on. We know that the scary event's going to involve North Korea. We know it's going to involve Russia. We know it's going to involve China, Russia, and Iran. You could see it, that it's all lining up. This is another thing. It's another distraction. And they're gaslighting because, think about this. The deep state were doing that before. After all, they controlled the North Korea through the CIA. They were the ones launching these rockets that were going and blowing up. That was their little distraction. President Trump has taken that one, and you know what it talks about North Korea and the Q drops, that Kim Jong-un is an actor. You heard correctly. He's an actor. And who's the one playing the game? Well, we know it's the White Hats are in control. We know that he's been freed. So what are they doing? They're basically playing the same game that the deep state have been playing on the masses, and they're utilizing that. So they're grabbing that, turning it around and gaslighting the deep state. The White Hats are in control, ladies and gentlemen. Don't be fooled. The deep state are no longer in control, but there are elements that do exist, and they're under the control of them. And they're being put through a personal, shall we say, Trumpy's horror show, a horror show that they wish they never came in and experienced, because they're being gaslit. Now, think about this. We're seeing a lot of weird things. We're seeing, for example, the stars, right? Let's go to the stars. Like we saw about Greta Thunberg, they've taken that, they've flipped it around and thrown it in the other direction. Then all of a sudden, they decided to take good old Big Mike and give her own podcast, and all Big Mike talks about is women's health, women this and women that. Well, we know that's the complete and utter opposite. And we know that's all part of the gaslighting. Then we got Woody Harrelson and Bill Maher, you know, which we know Bill Maher, that it speaks about him in the Q drops being a pedophile. And apparently that his cannabis shop got hit overnight. We're seeing the world of the influencers being exposed and how they're using artificial intelligence to make money. And OnlyFans basically uses artificial intelligence, and that's been proven, to create females. And there are men that operate these artificial intelligence using OnlyFans, and they're making a shitload of money as well. And you're seeing all these things that are going on, and it's just so ridiculous, ladies and gentlemen, it's not funny. As I said, the deep state are being gaslit in so many different ways, shapes, and forms. We're also seeing all this weirdness. This, shall we say, things like, okay, Secret Service agents fighting outside of Obama's house. Punching on. What's that all about? That's gaslighting the deep state again. It's getting them very, very nervous. And as you know, what does Q says? Panic in DC. They're doing things deliberately by design. And as I said, there is so many things that we can speak about. The amount of sex trafficking. Never before have we seen like these Alex brothers facing new charge, including sex trafficking on minors. Then you're seeing all these, these craziness in the world where they just all of a sudden people are pulling guns and shooting police and shooting people. And then you're seeing that mothers, it's ridiculous. And that's what I'm saying. We're just living in a world of the bizarre, the strange, where they're killing, this one in Australia, ladies and gentlemen, Queensland, a mother killed her 3-year-old daughter. And on social media, she was going on and saying about, train like it's war and all these things. Just these stories are becoming more and more commonplace. And obviously it wasn't a good year for this executive's mistress. All right, allegedly stabbing his wife to death. No, it wasn't a good year for him. Then you got a 24-year-old Australian woman, because this guy decided to make a remark against something that was about, about being in the kitchen. She decided to pour fuel on him and light him up. And this, look at this dash cam of a garbage truck smashing into a house. Now we could say, are the people that have taken the poison a time bomb? Have people lost their minds? Is this alluding to something? I mean, look, Arkansas teacher admits to sexually abusing a 15-year-old boy met at church, looted by Bill Clinton, bringing Bill Clinton into the mass consciousness again. Bringing in child trafficking or child sex abuse. And you got more of this going on. FBI analyst charged with having child sex abuse videos. Then you got New York dad killing his pregnant wife and stabbing his 2 children. Then you got somebody that's saying someone should blow up the Kennedy Center. Then you got Texas student teacher allegedly having sex with teens and told the police there was like a little brother. Look, these stories are just getting on and on and on and on. And it's just getting more and more ridiculous. An unhinged mother in Florida accused of stabbing a daughter at 12 in the face and in the neck. What's going on here? Then we're seeing this thing going on where someone ends up with a ship in their yard. It's another manifestation of leave the world behind. This is the thing. I mean, they're doing things deliberately by design as well. Then we've got that Haribo, Haribo, those people that produce the lollies or the gummies or whatever they are, and they're finding it to be tainted with cannabis. British mother dies of a heart, allegedly goes missing. And you're seeing this more and more commonplace, all these things going on over and over again. And then all of a sudden we got this 20-foot shark that's in a block island that is shark in the pond. Are you serious right now? How did that thing get in there? And then you got all these things. Harvard Medical School. Remember, President Trump is exposing Harvard. And then you got Harvard that are stealing organs and selling them on the black market. That's linking up the trafficking, the black market, the dark web, the connections, what they've been doing. Remember, they've been using Bitcoin to trade on the dark web, to procure these things. Then you got a $3.3 million human bones drug bust. So people are snorting human bones, and they've been brought in by ex-flight attendant. Weird but true. It's just getting to the point of being ridiculous, ladies and gentlemen, and it just goes on. A perverted prisoner accused of having sexually explicit video chats with an 11-year-old while being locked up in prison. I mean, how does that work? How is this all possible? And you're seeing more and more and more of this weirdness. I mean, look at this. How ridiculous is this? That's something that you would see in a cartoon. And that's what I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen. We're in some sort of hell at this moment. We're in some sort of hell. Let me just call it what it is. We're in some sort of hell. We're in some sort of psychological warfare, mind warfare. God knows what is true, what isn't. They've blurred the lines between reality and fiction. And they've been using now the AI. Now, remember what Melania brought out just recently about the take it down thing. And yet, a team died after being blackmailed with AI generated nudes. So they're drawing attention to this. Is it real? Is, you know, all these 11 hospitalized in a US mass shooting. Is it real? There's so much of this going on. So much of this. Look, another one. Mass shooting update in Philly. Florida mother accuses of killing of a son that's 6 years old. What's this? In an attempt to exorcise the demons. What's going on in this world? What is real? What isn't? You know what I mean? And you know that there is AI being deployed. We know there are psychological operations that are taking place. We are definitely in mind warfare. And Q says up is down, left is right. I mean, look, what is real? We don't even know ourselves what is real. And we're still waiting on a lot of things. Number one, the Fort Knox, we've forgotten about that. 9/11, we've forgotten about that. We've forgotten about CD 971 to do with JFK. We've forgotten about a lot of things. We've forgotten about the UAPs and UFOs and the extraterrestrials and all that. And look at this, new UFO fears about, here we go, after potential sightings over Arizona. So we've got this going on. The drones haven't been released. I mean, the truth about the drones. It's like, look at this. How to identify mystery drones. I mean, these articles keep making headway out there. Are they trying to seed mass consciousness? Yes. Are they trying to prepare mass consciousness for the truth? Yes. Why do they keep bringing these articles out there and they're no longer calling them conspiracy theories? A UFO that struck and damaged a US fighter jet. Military. Just one of the swarm of a mystery objects that have been buzzing around the Air Force, and still we have no answers. Still we have no answers, ladies and gentlemen. We're still being gaslit. So many questions, no answers, as Turson says. Yes, I agree. This is what I'm saying. So this is the little horror show that we're in right now. And the deep state are being gaslit. Their realities they're questioning their reality. The mass consciousness are trying to be awakened in so many different ways, shapes, and forms. Their world has been shaken upside down. But guess what? Guess what? We are along for the ride. We are being gaslit. We are being shaken up. And yet what? We've got to remain centered. We need to remain centered, ladies and gentlemen. We need to remain calm. Whatever comes our way, we must remember it's all happening by design. Don't allow what's happening out there to push you off your center. Don't be distracted by the noise because there's so much of it going on out there. There's so much. We need to keep our calm. Very, very fundamental. Because you know what? As I said, there's a lot of things going on and we don't want to partake and get ourselves absorbed in all this. Otherwise, you're going to end up a basket case. Forget about it. You won't make it. That's why we come here, because you know you're going to get the facts and some receipts. And that is exactly what grounds us. That is exactly what keeps us centered. You know, and I the thing is, yeah, we get frustrated, we get angry, we're within our rights to do so. But remember, there are things that are taking place that are necessary, and it's all been to avoid civil war at all costs. And also, they basically turn everything around and turn it on the deep state. The deep state, those players are even questioning their reality as well. This is psychological operations. We're in mind warfare, as Q says. Once you realize you can truly stand in your power. And that's why we speak about these things. Now, I've shown you examples of what the press secretary says, and I've shown you experiences from those that have been journalists that have been there and have told you that basically she has to lie. Now, there are those that are coming around and saying I'm causing trouble. No, I'm showing you the facts, evidence, and receipts. That gentleman, Simon Atiba, used to be in those presses. He was kicked out by Joe Biden's former press secretary. He was kicked out by them. So you can't say it was an agenda by the left or the right. No, you can't blame. No, you can't. He basically says it as it is. They are trained to lie. They have to. That's part of their job. Deflection. Deflection. President Trump deflects questions. He does. He's the master of deflecting things. He knows what he's doing. Remember the deep state, they were doing the same thing. And remember, we are in mind warfare and things need to be played a certain way. He's got to play the neutral card and therefore he's also got to play it their way. Fight, what did they say? Fight fire with fire. That's what you got to do. Another thing, ladies and gentlemen, that you probably be seeing out there is that, and I saw it in the Q Lounge. They've been talking about these severe geomagnetic storms that's due to hit on the 1st of June. However, there are those that go around, this solar flare, that solar flare, it's going to do this, it's going to do that. No. It's basically, you go by the facts, evidence, and receipts. Spaceweather.com. And it says there that basically that there has been a severe G4 class geomagnetic storm, okay, and auroras will be visible across Europe and many of the United States. Now, this is the thing. It doesn't say we're going to have some sort of event. It doesn't say that all these other things, that these clickbaiters have been spreading disinformation done by design, sensationalism, in order to gain a following and to continue feeding the lies and the deception that others keep pushing out there. And I say to people, when they put things out like that, read what's really going on. Don't go by what the clickbaiters are saying. Dot your I's and cross your T's. The flare was not technically X-class. Moreover, it was a slow explosion with lots of power. The blast was able to lift a massive CME out of the sun's atmosphere. Now, what effect does that have? Do we see, it's going to be hell on earth? No. But there are those that go around and spread the garbage. And don't believe the garbage that's out there, ladies and gentlemen, because there's a lot of it. That's what I'm saying. When you stick with the facts, evidence, and receipts, you're truly empowered. When you basically believe the fear porn, you're giving your power away to those entities, and they're doing it by design to enrich themselves. That's what they're doing. So don't listen to the garbage that's out there, please. Otherwise, you're giving away your power, and you don't want to do that. Now, you're also seeing things like, as I said, sensationalism, fear porn. Please, there's so much of it out there. Really think about it. You're going by hearsay, somebody that is spreading because those that create the disinformation is the disinformation, the source of it. But when they spread it and others spread it, based on their information being reliable, that becomes misinformation. Don't believe what's out there, ladies and gentlemen. There's a lot of it. And if you were to believe all of it, you'd be all basket cases right now. That's what I'm saying. That's why I make sure that we check everything. I don't trust anybody or anyone. I make sure that I see things and I go through things. That's part of being an investigative journalist. One thing when I was, basically and that I've implemented this in this journey, but also part of the when I was doing the course as well is that fact checking as part of it. You gotta make sure that you are 120% sure that the information that you're giving is factual. Because everyone relies on information. And if you give the wrong information, like those that do it deliberately, it could affect people's mental state. And it does. Because you think about it, you spread fear porn, there are people that are on the edge and they're saying, what's the point of living? And they make a decision of ending their lives. And that's because of somebody willingly did it, spread that disinformation, and then they've come across that misinformation. But they don't care. That's the problem. They don't take what they do seriously like I do, like real reputable journalists. They don't take it seriously. They don't take it seriously because they want to enrich themselves. And by spreading clickbait and fear porn, it creates a following because for some reason, people are so emotionally compromised that they're drawn to this hearsay, fear porn, sensationalism like a moth to a flame. And I guess it's the same deal. Look what's going on. It's the same deal. It's about entertainment. At the core of it, it's about containing their mind. Because, when people see that sensationalism and all that, people think, oh, this reality TV show, when they watch it, it's all real. It's all scripted. You realize when they do these things and they act these certain ways, it's like tune in next week or tune in tomorrow, and it draws people in. And that's exactly what they do. It's the lure. It's the bait. It's a way of sucking people in because people are drawn to these sort of things. Rather than the facts, evidence, and receipts, they're drawn to being entertained and believing the garbage that's out there because that's what it is, ladies and gentlemen. It's a bunch of garbage. And I want to bring the truth back into this movement. I want to bring the facts, evidence, and receipts back to this movement. This movement has lost a lot of credibility because of those entities going out there. And because of these entities, they've been painting us with the same brush, literally. They really have. And it's about time that their time comes to an end. The only way that is going to happen is that every one of us basically does a purge, gets rid of them. Enough's enough. Let's redirect them here to somewhere where they're not. We don't charge you a cent. We give you all the real facts, evidence, and receipts. We give you the real decodes based on the truth. Why would you want to go anywhere else where they're spreading garbage and hopium? And that's what I'm saying. You see what they do. They employ robots or bots to go around and give people the false sense that they know what they're talking about by inflating their numbers using bots with their views. They purchase them and then basically they think that, oh yeah, he knows what he's talking about or she knows because they've got hundreds of thousands of followers or thousands and thousands of views, hundreds of thousands of views on this video, and people are sucked in. And they believe that and they get hooked into that. Whereas someone like here, like me, that is trying to bring out the truth is against this, and I refuse to partake in purchasing bots, in resorting to those underhanded techniques, those deceptive techniques. I refuse to take part of it. I refuse to take part in whatever they're taking part. That's why I stand alone. That's why I don't do these interviews or partake in the circle jerking. I don't do that anymore because I know what they're all about. I want to empower people with the truth rather than empower people with lies and deception. Now, this is part one of Trumpy's horror show. Tune in tomorrow, and I'm going to do it tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen. Part two, which I'm going to reveal to you what President Trump, Elon Musk, basically, when they did their presses, we're going to decode that. We're going to go through these things together. And then also, let's see where things head. Now, we are in a horror show. We are in Trumpy's horror show. And that horror show has been designed for the deep state. It literally has. It's been done by design because, number one, not only has he created that horror show on the battlefront, on the, say, physical realm, but also he's created that horror show on the digital realm and has employed all assets, deploying all assets, including psychological operation groups that were used by the cabal, the deep state, against humanity. Now he's taken that and he's giving them their personal horror show. And you could see, ladies and gentlemen, that who's really in control is President Trump. You could see that you would never see this on the mainstream media. And I've proven the facts. Like you've seen about Piers Morgan, how he's come out and he's talking and he's going against the state of Israel. You've seen the mainstream media have been going against the state of Israel. You've been seeing, the people have been going against the state of Israel. It's to show that they're using the mainstream media, the very tool that the state of Israel, the Zionist organizations, have been using their mainstream media against mankind. They've taken that, and President Trump has created their own horror show, ladies and gentlemen. And what does President Trump says? That it's time to end the horror show. The time is coming. You can see that things are definitely moving along. And never before, have you seen this happen with such, shall we say, such a huge movement, as in masses. The masses have turned against Zionism, turned against the state of Israel, but the people are not to blame. See, the people are the ones that always cop it. Everyone puts them in the mix. So the people that live in the state of Israel are painted with the same brush. No. Don't paint them with the same brush. They are brothers and sisters as well. And I'm hoping that they see something like this and they can see that we're about common unity. We're about where we go one, we go all. It's about bringing out the uncomfortable truths. Remember, this is not a personal attack on the people. It's an attack on the deep state, the cabal, the created state of Israel, Zionism. It's an attack on all of that. President Trump is bringing on his horror show for them. And you could see, ladies and gentlemen, let's see what happens as we see with Israel and Iran. Let's see if Israel does go ahead and drop those bombs on those nuclear sites. We're going to see retaliation. You're going to see retaliation from the Houthis, Yemen, and Turkey, Russia. There's going to be some sort of retaliation. Things are going to increase with intensity. So let's see, ladies and gentlemen, we are on the precipice. Let's see what President Trump has installed for them. Now, I want to say thank you to Carol and Soren. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Thank you for your support, your unwavering support. Thank you to all of you who have supported this channel, have supported this, shall we say, God's army, the truth here on this platform. If you would like to support us, please do so. We give so much and we ask for so little. We truly do. Now, I want to say thank you to those who have contributed, who've donated. There's so, I truly appreciate it. That money goes towards, as I said, keeping the lights on. Even though it's not much, it's something. All right, I don't get much from Rumble and all the rest of it because, you know what, I don't pull in the numbers as these others because they use bots and all other deception means, because you think about it, they use the bots, they make out that they got so many followers and then they track organically people to what their little grift is going on. Me, I refuse. Doesn't matter. As President Trump says, it's not about popularity. It's not a popularity competition. It certainly ain't. It never has been for me. But you know what? It's about getting the message out. And we all need to do our bit, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I'm only one person. I'm trying to make sense of it all. I'm trying to give you the finger on the pulse. I'm giving you the decoding. I'm also, as I said, trying to push articles. It's only one man that's doing it, and it's me. My team are looking after the Q Lounge. Me, that's doing the rest of it. So think about how much work and effort goes into what I do. Now, if you would like to contribute, you can do so by going to linktr.ee/FCB Collective. You can donate, coffee shout. It's up to you. Please support our platform. Go to Freedom Channel Broadcast Rumble, which is right here. You can go to Truth Social, Q Lounge. Please, it's the place to be. We implore that people join that Q Lounge because you know what? You're going to get in contact with real patriots with not a Y, with a T. You're going to get, your brothers and sisters are going to support you in your truth journey. We're all there to help each other. Where we go one, we go all. Being part of the Q Lounge is basically a place where there's camaraderie and community. The Pulse, latest news and Intel Telegram, please show your support. Truth Social, X. We've also got the Truth Bombs as well. We're on there. We've got the YouTube, Facebook. We all got it all going on. Please support our platform. As I said, we don't put anything behind a paywall and we don't ask for much. We just want you to stand in your power, to know what's really going on, to know what really is the truth. And that's why we bring out these uncomfortable truths, because it is necessary. It is necessary that we know what's really going on behind the peripheral, what's really going on. And as you can see, I'm somebody that is about uniting people. I'm not sitting there bad-mouthing people as far as, those who deserve it, like these others going out there and grifting and all that. They deserve everything that's coming their way. They're deserving everything, ladies and gentlemen. They deserve it all. They deserve the wrath of God, to be quite honest, especially with all what they've been doing. Because you know what? They can't use these excuses that we didn't know what we were doing. You knew what you were doing. You were grifting. You knew what you were doing. You were lying. You knew what you were doing. You were deceiving people and using fear porn and all that rhetoric. And basically you were manipulating their minds and putting them not in a very good headspace, where I have been trying to pick up their pieces and try to empower them. That's what I try to do with my team. That's why, ladies and gentlemen, it's about time that people knew the real truth. It's time for the Kraken to be revealed. It's time to release the Kraken, ladies and gentlemen. The time is coming near. Now, obviously, think about it. I'm only one man trying to do this decoding, put this Kraken series together, and at the same time, give you the take as to what's really going on in this world, breaking it all down for you, cutting through the noise so you don't have to go through and be exposed to all the filth that's out there that I do on a daily basis. Think about how much news, ladies and gentlemen, that I absorb. And I'm not just talking about in the US no, worldwide. Worldwide, ladies and gentlemen, because I've got my finger on the proverbial pulse. How do you think I'm able to give you all this amazing geopolitical, military intel, all these things that are, basically these analyses? How do you think I'm able to do that? It's because, number one, I've earned my stripes as a master decoder using the Q drops. Number two, I'm an investigative journalist and I got every right to call myself that. And I can hold my head up high and call myself that because I've got the qualifications. And you could see, ladies and gentlemen, that I'm somebody that always brings on the facts, evidence, and receipts. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in to The Pulse here on the Freedom Channel broadcast with yours truly, FCB. Today was Trumpy's Horror Show Part 1. Join me on Trumpy's Horror Show Part 2 when we speak about Elon Musk, his connections to the deep state using facts, evidence, and receipts, decoding President Trump's Oval Office presser with Elon, and then also the just recent rally that he had in Pennsylvania. There are comms, ladies and gentlemen, and that's why you come here to Master Decoder FCB Decode, because I'm going to give you the real deal, the real tape. God bless you all. See you tomorrow. Thank you, everybody.